The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able. Give your attention to Councilwoman Ortiz for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you with thanksgiving in our heart. We thank you for this season. We thank you for our town. We thank you for covering our town. We thank you for the jobs that you've sent here. Well, Heavenly Father, as we go through this Thanksgiving holiday, we ask that you continue to put your head of protection around our town, around all of our officers and our emergency crew. Oh, Heavenly Father, we're thankful for those that have homes and are able to fulfill the needs of their families. And Lord, help us to remember those that don't have Thanksgiving dinner and don't have the necessities. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no proclamations. There is a presentation if the city manager would introduce.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have Brett Oding here from Visit Topeka Incorporated to give a presentation.
Good evening. You had me nervous with the TVs. Last time I was here, the internet went down, so I had to wing it. So we made it a non-internet presentation, and the TVs weren't working. Okay, so this is going to be a presentation over year-to-date, 2017, all the way up to today, actually. Much of the stuff you see is similar to what we send you in the quarterly reports, but it has more up-to-date information. We added a couple extra things in here, too, that some pretty exciting numbers that's coming out of some of the attractions and what's going on in Topeka right now. So if you have questions, just feel free to ask, but we'll go ahead and get started. The city contract that we have is for $1.5 million, and that is something that has increased gradually through the years as more hotel revenues came in. This graph here you see is a breakdown of operations, sales, and marketing for 2017. You'll notice that the numbers total higher than $1.5 million. That is because we also make our own revenue, sponsorship sales, ad sales, as well as put on some events that cover tickets. The next slide, which you cannot see. You want me to pause? You want me to keep going?
We don't have.
Nope.
I'm going to go ahead and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
The budget for 2018 is going to show that since we've been here, we've been trying to take as much money out of operations and put it into sales and marketing as possible. 2018 is going to show a 72% increase in marketing. We've cut back operations a tad bit as well. This bar graph here shows a good example of the last 3 years, how operational expenses have went down as we work with better contracts. We've also done some more of our own events, like we said, and we've put a great deal of that money that we've saved in operations into marketing the city, marketing all the different attractions. Economic impact is a very big deal. Travel and tourism is economic impact to the city. You're going to see some numbers here. The Smith Travel Research, this is all but 4 hotels in the city of Topeka pay into this organization that tracks hotel revenues. The big part here is hotel revenues as of today, or $38 million for the city. It's $38 million in hotel revenues. The last 2 months, we'll see about $6 million. We will end with about $44 million in hotel revenues in the city for the year. These two graphs here, the one on the left, this is our annual transit guest tax collections to show you how we've consistently been increasing as a city every year since 2007, which is as far back as we could go. The last 2 months there at the very end are projected from last year, so you'll see that we will see an increase for 2017 as well. The bid fund is something that I know that you all ask a lot of questions about. For 2017, we've had 17 total different bid fund requests for $85,000. Now, some of them are requests from outside organizations. Some of them are our staff going out to events and offering money to bring an event to town. Those have actualized in over 10,000 room nights, $4.4 million in direct spending, $300,000 in sales tax dollars just from hotels. That's not counting gas, restaurants, anything else. It's just hotel sales tax dollars. This right here is very difficult to read. This is a spreadsheet that we use to keep track. I don't expect you to see it, but what I do, the middle yellow box shows 101.5%. We had $85,000 in asks for the bid fund. We only paid out $74,000. The reason is because we have certain metrics and guarantees that people must reach for us to pay out the full amount. We ended up paying out $74,000. We brought in $75,000 off of those events just in transit guest tax dollars. So aside from how much direct spending sales tax dollars, we actually recouped all that money that we paid out for this year. The Blizzard Bash just happened 2 weeks ago. This is a very good example. We gave $15,000 to Blizzard Bash when they first started a couple years ago to bring that event to Topeka. It's a big demolition derby. It's been named top demolition derby in the world 2 years in a row. We have some tracking software. The map, you see some different pins. Have some tracking software that show where people come from when they attend certain events. We track this because they looked at the Blizzard Bash website, either on our website or the Expo Center. Then they show up. 650 people. That equates, that's about a 10% margin, so that's 6,500 people that would have came from out of the state to that event. 15,000 total in attendance, generated almost $800,000 in direct spending off of us offering $15,000 for them to come here. So it's a great return on investment. This slide right here shows our sales department. This last year had 215 commitments where they worked with different organizations to try to book rooms, conventions, ball tournaments here. That is going to actualize in 49,000 total room nights for this year and beyond. Some of them are not actualized. They might be events in 2018, 19, 20, but almost 50,000 rooms just this year we've had a direct responsibility of bringing to Topeka. 4 of those are example here. These are national events. These are 4 big national sporting events. The one on the bottom left just happened over the weekend on Friday and Saturday. It's the National Junior College Half Marathon Championships. There were 14 teams that came here for that. 11 of those were from out of the state of Kansas. So those teams are coming here, staying in hotels. They have to eat out. It's big business to bring these national tournaments to Topeka. Next year, we'll see 233 new hotel rooms come in the market. And these hotel rooms are very different than any other hotel rooms. There's a different segmentation that we look at after this. So these will actually help the market of Topeka. This won't hurt the market of Topeka having these hotel rooms here. There's a whole different segment of the population and business that are not currently in Topeka that we feel these two can help attract to Topeka. Events and marketing. Here is a great example of all the different events that my staff put on this year. There's a lot of them, and a lot of them are great, and they're bringing a lot of people to town. I'm sure many of you have attended at least one of those events. These 2 programs here, the Visit Topeka Vacation Value Card has over $100 in value that people from out of Shawnee County, it's just a little business card, has buy one, get one free at the zoo, dollars off at other attractions, for instance. You can only request this if you're from out of Shawnee County. We had 411 year to date. The one on the right is the Grapes and Grains Passport, which is essentially the 3 wineries and 3 breweries in Shawnee County. We created this as well, where you go around, you stamp it, and you can get a wine glass or a beer glass at the end. Since July, we've had 307 people reach out and ask for those. So those are people from out of the county asking for those that they're helping bring to Topeka. This is another one that's hard to read, but what I want you to see here is there's a big green dot in the middle. That is Topeka. The blue dots all around it and throughout the country are rivals that we track with that same software I showed you for Blizzard Bash. If someone looks at one of our websites pages or an attraction page, then they show up in Topeka, we can see where they came from. We don't know anything about them except for where they came from. So this is a good example that people from out of town are showing up in Topeka for different events. Now, we can also tell what events they're coming for. For instance, in June, the food truck and the Tap That Festival, because of that tracking, we were able to see $20,000 in room night bookings off of those two events. And we don't capture all of them, but from what we saw that those two events generated $20,000. July, we tracked the Fiesta, and it tracked $20,000 on its own. And then in September, we looked at two different ones, the Mariachi Festival, Kansas Chocolate Festival, about $15,000. So these events that we're creating and putting on are bringing people from out of town. They're spending money in hotels, restaurants, going shopping, et cetera. Here's an example of some ads that the marketing department's done. Very good ads. We've won some awards at the State Tourism Conference with some of our ads. We're very excited and happy with what we're putting out there. Some exciting numbers for the attractions. This is the 2017 attendance numbers. We sorted these from the top down. Every month we're reaching out to these attractions, asking us to give them their total attraction numbers of how many people are coming to their venue. I broke down 4 of them that are really of note. The Evel Knievel Museum, everybody knows about. We spent this year $30,000 on digital and print advertisements in motorcycle magazines, motorcycle websites, because we knew that this was the kind of attraction that would draw people to out of town. Here's some examples of some of those ads that we did. Now, what you see from that, they've had an attendance of over 16,000 people attend the museum since it opened. 55% of those people are from outside of the state of Kansas. That $30,000, to recoup that in transit guest tax dollars, we would have to sell 627 rooms. There's been 16,000 people show up, at least 8,000 of them from out of the state. So we would assume that they stayed somewhere, hopefully in Topeka. So that was a good return on investment for us. Next, also 21 different countries have visited the Evel Knievel Museum. We're getting these numbers by multiple ways. These are every single person that walks in the door of the museum is asking, what is your zip code and why are you here? So we know for certain that there's 21 different countries that have came in so far. It's an international draw. It's doing very good work for Topeka. Kansas Children's Discovery Center, 2 numbers to note here. 1 of every 4 people that go to the Discovery Center are from outside of Shawnee County. A lot of people think that Discovery Center is just for locals, but that's not the case. Since they opened in 2011, they've had over 40,000 visitors from outside of the state of Kansas. And I got a call today that today of all days, they greeted their 500,000th person through the doors today. So 500,000 people in 6 years to go in there. The Kansas State House, we've talked about this for the last couple years. We paid the state $22,000 to help them keep that open on Saturdays. And what you see here is there's over 3,000 people that have attended and entered the State House on Saturdays only. So it's working right now, paying that. And that's something that we look to do in 2018 as well. Then the last one is one that you're very familiar with, the zoo. But what you might not be so familiar with is that 43% of everybody that went to the zoo this year is from outside of Shawnee County. Similar to the Discovery Center, people are coming to our attractions from outside of the county and outside of the state. Bring a lot of business to Topeka. The last thing I want to talk about and show you is a rack card program that we really wanted to work. We tried to find things for some of the smaller attractions, some of the museums, Ritchie House, Charles Curtis House, the Mulvane Art Museum, different attractions that not everybody is coming here for, but we know that once they're in town, they might see what it's about and they'll go check it out. So what we did is we developed and designed and created and distributed a rack card program to all these different locations and all the hotels. Here's an example, and again, it's hard to read, but what I want you to see here is that there's a very consistent look and feel of all those different rack cards. One on the left is Evel Knievel, the State House, and then the zoo. So it's a front and back rack card. How much is the ticket? A little explanation about it. When is it open? Where is it at? And then this last slide here shows an example. This is the one in our office, but this is what they all look like. So these rack cards we put up in all those attractions, and it has enough holders for all the rack cards as well as our visitor guides. We have more people coming to us wanting to be involved as well. So now we're trying to figure out how we can put more rack cards in those racks, or we have to create more. So that is all I have. If anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you for the report. Excellent and a lot of good information. Are there questions or comments? Councilwoman Schwartz?
Thank you, Your Honor. Brett, things have really been happening in Topeka. As Councilwoman Clear last week said, we need to say we are a happening place right now. As TGT Chair, I ask that you come and give a presentation, and I'll be gone next month. So I hope that if nobody asks you from the council to come and give a presentation, that you take the initiative to at least give a quarterly report, because this is the good stuff we need to hear. And our numbers are up, we're doing great, and I hope that the next TGT, the committee works with you as well as this past committee has, because you've done a great job for Topeka.
Thank you. We have really revamped that quarterly report and made it a lot easier to read, and not put so much data in there and just showing what you would really want to see. But before the meeting, I was also talking to Councilman Jensen that this is just for 2017. 2018 is really going to be rocking. And I would be more than happy sometime in the first quarter to come back and just talk about what's going to be happening in the spring, summer, and fall of next year, because there's a lot of good stuff coming down for next year.
Very good. Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, good job. I think you're doing a great job. And I was just wondering if the hotel that closed there on Farallon, the old Holodome, is that going to affect any of our room nights or anything like that? It is an unusual hotel. Slide and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
You know, Mike Bell, our Vice President of Sales, and I worked there for a very long time, so it was a little disheartening to see that happen. We had some good memories there. As far as will it affect Topeka, the answer is ultimately going to be no. And the reason why is you can't always read into what the STAR report shows about the occupancy in the city. There are different segments. Each of you, when you travel, you stay at different hotels or different price ranges depending on what your budget is or what your likes are. And that hotel was in a price range that we have a lot of other hotels that are in that similar price range. The Cyrus Hotel, the Hilton Garden Inn, the Homewood Suites that just opened as well, those are in a whole different price range that we don't currently have right now. And so we actually, not to discount that hotel closing, but looking at these other hotels, there's not a direct correlation of a hotel closing or more hotels opening and that having a straight effect on occupancy of the city. We feel that the occupancy is actually going to increase by these extra hotels. Those people that were staying at that hotel will go to other hotels similar in price and similar in brand in the community.
Other questions?
I had one more.
Yes, go ahead.
Went to a Go Topeka function, and the Visit Topeka staff was at the front table. And how's that changing, being involved more with the planning of those type of meetings?
It's, I will say it's going well, but the staff's all in the back, so no, it's going very well. But you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of the Greater Topeka Partnership, and Visit Topeka, our marketing staff, has now taken over events, marketing, and communications for the Chamber, Go, and all their organizations. It's 13 total organizations. And there's been some bumps along the road as we continue to take on all those events, but things are going pretty well for the most part. The staff is working super hard. We've had to hire some new staff. We've taken on some of their staff that are really good at their jobs as well. And things are going good. We still are trying to smooth things out, and we're shooting for January 1st to where we really feel comfortable. But things are going well. It's been exciting. One thing I will say about that is having a tourist organization work with economic developers in the chamber, and likewise them working with us. One thing that's allowed is, I would not say that we worked in individual silos, because we always worked well together, but we're really more focused on just our mission at the time. Putting us all together where we're seeing everything, what it allows us to do is understand better what Molly and Go Topeka are doing and what Matt at the chamber is doing, and have a more well-rounded idea about when we hear of an event that they're going to or something that's happened, how we can put a marketing communication spin on it. And from the flip side, they're able to give us some ideas on how do you handle this from a membership business standpoint for some of the attractions or the hotels. So we're seeing a lot of good opportunities there by us working together.
Other questions? Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brett, I thought your numbers looked really good. I just have one question. Does that include children? Is that what you're doing?
In what respect?
Like at the zoo and you're taking down their zip, is that like when they come through, is that per head?
So those, each different attraction tracks them differently. And Brendan tracks when someone comes up, they're tracking what the zip code is, where they're coming from. So there's two different ways they do it. They obviously have the members for the Friends of the Zoo, and then they have individual tickets coming in. And so they're tracking those individual tickets separately.
So what about the Discovery Center then?
Discovery Center's doing the same thing right now. They split them up. Evil Knievel does not have a membership, but they are talking about trying to figure out some way to do a membership. A couple of the others that do a really good tracking zip codes are the Combat Air Museum. They ask everybody coming in to do that as well. I think that might be it, that does a really good job where we feel really comfortable that about 100% of everybody coming in the doors, they're finding out where they're from.
So that does include children, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And I did see somewhere today, I don't know where, but somebody threw it on my desk, that Evil Knievel, we've got the largest museum, is that correct?
We technically have the only museum.
The only?
The Knievel family has made sure around the world that there are no other organizations that are calling themselves an official museum because they have the naming rights for their father's museum. So there's a couple tours and little pop-up exhibits that are around, but as far as the only museum, number one, it is the only museum, and number two, it is by far the biggest one in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you. Excellent report, good information. Completes the presentations. We'll proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Walgett.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Here. Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
On council, there are no additions or deletions. There is one executive session at the completion of the meeting. We will proceed then to the appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Ivan Weichert to the Citizens Advisory Council for a term ending November 22, 2020.
That is the appointment for your pleasure. Councilman DeLisla moves to approve. Councilwoman Hiller seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. That's yours. Oh, excuse me. I don't know about this. It's,
Well, how about we take a... There we go. All right. Now you can start writing. We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the appointment is approved. I would like to introduce, it was close. I'd like to introduce Ivan Weichert as the appointee to the Citizens Advisory Council. And this is particularly the at-large appointees to the council are to be representative of the developers, architectural people in the community, and we're certainly pleased to have a person of your stature serving on it. Thank you, welcome, appreciate your service. We will proceed with the consent agenda.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of September 30, 2017 through October 27, 2017, and enumerating said expenditures therein. B are minutes of the regular meeting of November 14, 2017, and there is a list of applications for cereal malt beverage and dance hall license renewals, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay, that is the consent agenda. Your pleasure. Councilman Clear moves to approve. Councilman Schwartz seconds. There is no discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay, don't vote. Yeah, he is signed up to speak, so he'll be here. to Mish.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, I guess we're having technical difficulties.
We can vote by a show of hands.
Yeah, I think it must be. Okay. I apologize. So I guess we will raise our hand.
Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda as read, please raise your right hand. Those opposed?
We have 10 yes?
10 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. We go to the action items. A resolution.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout approving the 2018 Neighborhood Empowerment Grants as recommended by the Neighborhood Empowerment Grant Committee.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, the Neighborhood Grant Committee has completed their review of grant applications for 2018 funding. Neighborhood Relations Director Hahn will present the recommendations for that funding.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Governing body members. We are unfortunately not going to be able to put the map up. Is it?
You said it's up there.
Nope.
Nope, that's not it.
Sorry.
You said it's on November 14th.
I'm sure it starts on 20.
No.
2018.
Okay. Maybe, no. Sorry. Okay.
It's just,
Well,
So we were
we
gonna
do
put-
have this in our
we're going to
packet.
put
We
this
received the
lovely
material.
map up here on the screens just for the public more than anything. You all have it included in your packet materials, and it is showing the locations of the proposed projects. So I am pleased to be here this evening to present to you the recommended empowerment projects for 2018. But I want to back up just a minute and tell you about a few changes that we've made to our process in response to council concerns about all of the HUD funds that go into our park system, or city funds. So one thing that we did do is we reworked the workshop that we have for the applicants. They're required to attend a workshop in the spring. It explains the grant process, but this year we invited a bunch of our community partners to come in and give some presentations, and we were really trying to help generate ideas for projects that would benefit the neighborhood. So this year, our list of partners that presented at the workshop included the Topeka Metro Bike Share Program, Bloomerang. I don't know if you all are familiar, but Bloomerang works on creative neighborhood branding, and they did the no-tow banners. Keep America Beautiful, and Arts Connect. We also had the Planning Department and the Shawnee County Parks and Rec Department present on neighborhood planning, infrastructure, and the long-range park plan and park improvements. So we were really trying to get folks to think outside the box on improvements that would benefit the neighborhoods, but not just be park equipment. So, included in your packet, we have the report that we will submit as part of our CAPER. It's the 2018 Empowerment Report. And then in that, you guys have the list of projects or applications that were submitted. The projects that are being recommended for approval for 2018 include the McKinley Park swings in North Topeka West, the Ward Mead Old Prairie Town signage, Ward Mead Bike Station and bikes, Ward Mead Solar Pedestrian Lights in the 500 block of Western, Central Park Community Center Commercial Range, Chesney Park signage at 18th and Southwest Clay, that's for the park, Chesney Park replacement of placemaking signage, so their neighborhood signage that says "Welcome to Chesney Park" at Washburn Avenue, or I'm sorry, on Washburn Avenue from 17th to 21st Street, and then Chesney Park sidewalk on 19th Street from Washburn Avenue to Lane Street. Those are the projects that are being recommended for your approval. And I would point out for you that in 2017, 4 of the 6 approved projects were park improvements. In 2018, 4 of the 8 recommended projects are park improvements, but 2 of those are for signage and only 2 are for equipment. So I think we're moving a little in that direction in response to the concerns that were expressed by the governing body. That concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there questions? Councilman Clear?
You knew I was going to ask this.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
last year, I asked the same question, why we're putting city money into county parks. And I know you're working towards that, but it's still another $100,000 going into county parks. So we do not, once we put these swings in, it's the county swings, so we're just kind of giving all this to the county, or do we own it anymore, or?
No, we don't own it. I guess technically, yes, ma'am, it would be the county swings, but I think it's the community's swings.
And why isn't the community going to the county asking for this?
I can't.
Because we give it to them?
I can't speak to that.
So if we didn't give it to them, would they, I wonder if they go to the county and? Okay, thanks.
Okay, you've made a point. Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concerns are kind of in the same line, the Ward Meet bikes. Can you explain them? Because we have the bike share program all over, so
Yes, ma'am.
why do we need Ward Meet bikes? I know
So-
that's Karen's district, but she don't need her own bikes over there.
So the bike share is all over the community, but definitely not in all of the places that it could be. So we had bike share come in and talk about where were ideal locations, and then all of the applicants were required to work with those agencies on their application if they chose to apply, as an example, for the bike share program. Ward Mead is intending to put their bike share, sorry, give me a second here. Their bike share station, it'll be near Tilton's West Side Thriftway at the 1100 block of 6th Avenue. So it'll be on a major arterial and serve, I'm sure, more than Ward Mead.
But we got bike stations going up everywhere. That's why I don't understand why we need to invest in these.
Okay.
Is that just because we're partnering with them? Because, I mean, they are going up everywhere in my district and, you know, Highcrest, they're everywhere. Everywhere I look, they're going up. So I guess I just don't understand why we're utilizing this money when
So the neighborhoods we don't tell them what to apply for. We tell them what we're not allowed to fund with HUD dollars. And the empowerment RFP absolutely outlines that the improvements have to benefit the community and empower the neighborhood.
right, I understand that.
So if it fits within those guidelines,
Right.
we're gonna accept their application.
I understand that, Sasha. Who's going to maintain them?
The bike share program will.
So we're just buying more bikes?
We are paying for the installation of the rack system, and then they are purchasing some bikes with their, or that's what they've applied for.
And they will maintain all that?
The bike share will, yes, ma'am. They'll belong to bike share, but the neighborhood has just facilitated getting a location there close to their neighborhood.
So when there's not any bikes there because they're all over town, they're okay with that? Because that's what's probably going to happen. You know, they try to shift them around, but they understand what could happen. Is that correct?
I do believe that they do. Carl Fundenberg came and did the presentation.
Right,
and
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. That's
Yeah, I
right.
did, I go through that, but I just, you know, it just kind of sounds to me, and I just want a clear understanding that these are just award me bikes, you know, that they will stay there, but they have to understand they're purchasing more to be there, but there might not be there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I just want the council to understand that and Ward Mead to understand that as well. I think it's great that they have stations, and I think it's great that Metro is putting up stations all over, but to specify and say, we're gonna have these here, and they're not gonna be moved, that's not gonna be the case. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments, discussion? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I too, I thought the comments last year were strong, and I knew that you committed to continuing to work on that. I guess I'll support them this year, but I do think we need to continue working on this. And I represent neighborhoods that ask for some of these, but I remember talking to John Knight after we had this conversation a year ago, and I said Central Park wants to pay for a replacement, Central Park wants to pay for a replacement range in the community center. He said, oh, that's maintenance. They should never have to get a grant to pay for that. We should pay for that. And I said, okay. And yet here it is. And the signs to the parks as well. Fundamentally, under that, I don't want us to inadvertently be contributing to disinvestment in our lower income neighborhoods. Because I don't ever want to get to the point, well, gosh, the county pays for the signs on all the other parks. Why don't they pay for ours? Or creating, again, I'm sure inadvertently, this expectation that the city would help with any of our lower income neighborhood parks. So just food for thought for us.
Okay.
And I think the question that I think Councilwoman Ortiz asked earlier, we do need to be asking the county for these things. We need to, each of us has a rep to the county's Parks and Rec Advisory Board. We need to key in on that planning. And, you know, one of the reasons I understood that people wanted to merge or otherwise move that Parks and Rec program to the county was to broaden the tax base for it and have it supported fully. So I know it's a toss-up, but I look forward to more consideration.
Okay. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sasha, is this all the applications you got?
Yes, sir. All of the applications that were received are listed on the spreadsheet included
Okay.
in your packet.
Thank you. If you'd chosen to say, hey, we're not going to fund anything that's in a park, what would have happened to the money?
Well, there are 4 projects that are not parks, although, so what we will do with any unexpended money that was tagged for this empowerment program, because it's CDBG funds, because if you notice on the spreadsheet and on the report, there were $135,910 in project requests. We're
Right.
recommending $110,000. There will be a contingency, but it won't consume all $29,000 that's left. Those dollars will go into our emergency repair and our accessibility programs. Those are 2 of our most utilized programs, and at this time of year, we're out of money. So that's what we'll be using the dollars for, is affordable housing projects.
So if I may ask.
Sure.
So had you chosen not to fund half of these, could you use all the money for that? Is that correct?
We always have more need in terms of housing rehabilitation and repairs and accessibility improvements to keep people in their homes than we have dollars to fund, yes, always.
Meaning the city does not have to fund any of these empowerment grants to these uses, is that correct, or?
No, that is correct. So
Okay,
we
okay.
receive our HUD funds, and there are general guidelines. And then we've created many of the all of the programs that are included in our consolidated action plans are creation of our HND, and before that it was economic development or some community development.
Okay.
It's had many different names. NIAs were created by the city of Topeka. They're not a HUD creature. They are a part of the system that we created to utilize those HUD funds. So do we have to fund the empowerment grants? No, sir, we don't. But we do believe in empowering the neighborhoods and giving them the opportunities to make improvements and improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, just want to make sure I understand. So we can say next year, we're absolutely not going to fund anything in the county parks.
The governing body could tell me, or
That's
the
a
city
policy.
manager could tell me
Okay.
that, yes, we don't want to fund any more park improvements. That would be my preference, because I know that the neighborhoods really want to take care of their parks and improve them, and I understand how that impacts the quality of life in their neighborhoods.
Well, and I'm just asking, I don't necessarily agree with that idea. You know, I get lots of phone calls from folks every day, well, I shouldn't say every day, at least once a week, where they've called the wrong governmental entity for this problem. People in this community don't care which government is responsible for which thing. They just want their problem fixed. They just want their park beautified. They just want to live in a nice town. So, you know, I understand that, you know, this is money allocated to the city of Topeka that we're spending on the county parks. Citizens don't care. They want their park to be nice. And I do support spending this money and investing it in these communities, because at the end of the day, if it's our property, if it's the county's property, it's everyone's property, and this makes it look so much better. And I commend your work in doing that, and I do support, you know, spending city dollars on that through these grant programs. I think it's excellent.
Okay.
And one other quick comment. So we have a bike share stand in College Hill, and Carl Fundenberger and his team do a phenomenal job of keeping at least a couple of bikes there. Yes, those bikes are spread very thin. They need more. But those guys do just an incredible job of balancing resources. So yes, you're right, there is a concern that we bought these bikes and now they're moving around. But you know what? They have done a fantastic job for us, so I can't imagine they wouldn't do the same over there as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman De La Isla.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgast. My only comments are to, at least for this year, if we could go ahead and establish that next year we're no longer going to include the parks. I think it's important for us to validate the citizens that went up and stood up and told us what they really wanted in their neighborhood. So for this year, absolutely, I'm going to be supportive of this allocation, but then I think that what we're hearing from the body in general is, let's take a look at the policy and start fixing the policy next year. But I will support this because I feel like we really have to give the citizens that went ahead, that stood up and advocated for what they want in the neighborhood, what they need.
Okay, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I met with my representative, who I put on the Parks and Recs board, and they are, I thought he said, $300,000 short in maintenance for parks. So we need to be mindful of that. We need to make sure that we get a report, because he was like really shocked. I mean, money goes so far, and these grants, you can only do certain things with this money. And it was brought in by the low to moderate income funding. So I think if they're saying, you know, we want better equipment in our parks, I think we ought to listen to that, because they're the ones that's filling out the grants as well, so that they have better equipment, you know, in their neighborhoods. You know, maybe I'd feel a little bit different if it was Gage Park, you know, but then again, we all use Gage Park. Our equipment out there, before the city even owned it and inherited it, it's old. It's real old. And I don't know if you guys have looked at or filled out one of these applications, but it's expensive. So to do it in phases, I think is a great job, but I will continue supporting it for our children to make sure that it's safe. But I hope that you would talk to your representative on that, because I just had breakfast with him on Saturday, and he was very concerned, and he'll be bringing that to the commissioners, but he was very concerned with the shortage of money for the maintenance of all the parks. And so we need to remember that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion, your pleasure. Councilman Jackson,
Motion to approve.
move to approve. Councilwoman Claire seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
Ten yes.
10 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. That completes our action items for this evening. We go to the non-action items. The first one is a discussion on the 2018 Special Alcohol Grant recommendations. The clerk would read.
A is discussion of funding recommendations by Topeka Shawnee County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Advisory Council in the amount of $535,000 for the 2018 Special Alcohol Fund.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, the Topeka Shawnee County Alcohol and Drug Advisory Council made their recommendations for 2018 for the Special Alcohol Fund. There are reductions in many of the programs from last year, primarily due to the fact that we received $85,000 less in funding for 2018. Max Wilson is here and available to answer questions for the governing body if they have any.
Okay. Would you like to hear a presentation from Max? I think yes. Would you come forward and give us an overview and maybe speak to some of these, the issues? Thank you. Welcome, Max.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Walgast, City Manager Trout and the staff, and welcome to Topeka. Always love trouts. Trout's a good fish, too.
Good fish. Good fish.
I'm Max Wilson, Grant Review Chair for the Topeka Shawnee County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Advisory Council. I'd like to recognize the members of the council who are here. Would you please stand? You got anybody here from the council? Most of these are also grantees, grant applicants, so I'm asked for the grant applicants to also stand and be recognized. Stand twice, okay. Not all of them are here, of course. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Alcohol and Drug Council. It's been in existence for more than 30 years, has 29 members, including 9 community representatives, 2 government representatives, 9 treatment and prevention representatives, and 9 alternate representatives. This group meets once a month at St. Francis Hospital, 2nd floor, room 3 normally. I've been doing that for 25 plus years. I still get lost up there. I still have to go the whole circle to find the room. These advisory councils were established by state statute to recommend to City Council and County Commissioners expenditures from the liquor by the drink tax funds for prevention, intervention, and treatment of substance use disorders. Our roles of our advisory council are also, 1, to promote Recovery Month and evidence-based prevention, intervention, and treatment services throughout Topeka and Shawnee County, and 2, provide a forum for service providers and others concerned about substance use disorders. 3, identify unmet community needs regarding alcohol and other drug disorders. And 4, support and promote programs and strategies to effectively address community needs and support and promote community education on alcohol and other drugs. Our 2017, our 2017 grant review team includes members who are experienced grant reviewers, successful grant writers, and experts on evidence-based prevention, intervention, and treatment programs and services. I emailed each of you, I believe it was Monday or last week, about a paragraph on each of them showing you their experience. The current 2017 liquor by the drink tax funds is total, this year is $620,000. Next year's 2018 funding from this source is projected to be only $535,000, an almost 14% or $85,000 reduction from this year's funding level. The explanation from the city for this reduction is, quote, in previous years, there was a cash balance that allowed spending over the revenue coming in, but after this year, the balance will be exhausted. The projected ending balance for 2018 will be a little over $18,000 if we budget expenses to match revenue of $535,000. This reduction, coupled with projected reduction in contracted and youth and social service funding of more than $64,000, has put many of our providers in a survival mode. After many hours of grant review and written comments by the Grant Review Committee, including use of the city's new grant scoring process, the Advisory Council recommends 2018 funding for the following programs. Prevention and Recovery Services Prevention Programs, $171,000. Prevention Recovery Services Youth Evaluation Intervention Programs, $51,300. Vallejo Recovery Center's Social Detoxification Program, $258,430. Third Judicial District's Drug Court Program, $27,450. Kansas Children's Service League's Successful Connections Drug Endangered Children Program, $12,300. Boys and Girls Club Smart Moves at the Teen Center, $8,800. And Boys and Girls Club Smart Moves at Logan Center, $5,720. Unfortunately, due to the decrease of the $85,000 in projected 2018 funding and 2 applicants' city grant scores of 70% or under, the advisory council is not able to recommend 2018 funding for Topeka Youth Projects, Jobs for Young Adults, and Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters community and site-based mentoring programs. I'll now be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there questions for Mr. Wilson? Councilwoman Claire?
Thank you. As the chair of the Economic Development Committee, I understand how hard this is to only have so much money and how you have to decide who you're going to fund. So I appreciate all your hard work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilman Keller?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to clarify, because it can be hard to wrap our hands around this sometime. We really haven't had a reduction in funds generated for this purpose. It is only because we had extra money for a couple of years because of carryover, and now that extra money is gone.
That's correct.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I understand
Okay,
that.
good point.
Reserve funds were out of them about.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilwoman Del Isla?
Thank you, Mayor Wolgast. Max, do the organizations have an opportunity to appeal to understand how their scores were impacted?
They did, one of them did. One of them came, the youth project came to the Alcohol and Drug Council. There's no appeal process. The only appeal process for these are with the governing body, you. This is their only opportunity to appeal.
So this is this is a recommendation comes to the council, to this governing body to approve or make
That's
changes
correct.
to.
That's
Great.
correct.
Okay,
And it was really great reluctance. You know, I've been a
Right.
supporter of Topeka Youth Project forever,
yeah.
even pre-George, and that's
Yeah.
forever. And they're a great program, great project, great people. But we felt like taking the scores into consideration and also the principal purpose was stronger with the others. So that's how we made the decision.
Thank you. No other discussion. We have several people that have signed to speak to this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your presentation. Well, then go to these, and just that some may not have spoken before the council before, you have a 4-minute time limit. There's the lights up here on the board to go on green, and then one goes white when you have 1 minute left to bring it together, and then the red when you must be finished. The first person to speak is Georgiana Wong, and if you would come forward, and then we ask we always say the next person is going to be Stacy Williams, so if you could move to the out if you're in the middle of the aisle so that we can move along quickly through all the presentations.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk about this situation that we're in with the major cut of the youth project. There was a resolution passed by the city council that we were drug and alcohol prevention. And we have received funds from the drug and alcohol grant for probably 15, 20 years. And if you looked and saw what we got in the last couple of years of 38,000, 40,000, zero, I mean, that seems just a little excessive of a cut. Now, when I went back through, and no, I did not appeal with the Drug Alcohol Council, they had me as a speaker for one of their sessions, and they brought up the review, but I did not ask for an appeal from them because I knew I'd need it from you. So anyway, some of the things that I commented on were the outcomes and the objectives. And I sat down with Jill Shalansky and Corey and Rochelle Vega and to determine how to do these, because there was so much confusion on it. So we went to their office, they helped us, they approved it, and we've used it. Then we're getting a low score on those 2 areas that the city themselves gave us. The rest of it, as far as duplication of services, we've never duplicated anyone's services. We have a mentoring program. It's a Kansas Star program. It was announced in the newspaper with the kids all taking rides on the city bus before Big Brothers and Big Sisters came out. There was no duplication on our part, and we were graded down on that. The other areas that we were graded down on were putting the wrong PO number on a form, being late on quarterly reports. Never have we been late. Now, to turn it in late, yeah, because we called prior to get an explanation on a piece of it, how we were to do it, and the call wasn't returned. So then email was sent out. When we finally got it and submitted the final, of course it was late. But it wasn't late on our part. We had it done. We just had a question that had to be clarified before we could hit the enter button. So I'd ask you guys to consider, the youth project has been around 33 years. We've got 6,000 young people out there working in the community. My oldest one's 50 now, that came through when they were 16 years old. And it is definitely a reduction in drug and alcohol use. We visit with the kids, they come back. Am I out?
No, we have one more minute.
Okay. They have come back to us. On our board of directors, we have 4 JYA grads, with Stacy Williams that owns Petland, Drew Doty that owns DS Solutions, and we have Deanna Houston. She's with Stormont Valley Labor and Delivery Nurse. So our purpose with the board is to make sure we're getting input and how they saw it. Third generation's now coming through, so it has to work. I mean, there's just, to me, the proof is in the pudding finally. I've always wondered, does this make a difference? And with them coming back and sending a third generation through, it obviously makes a difference. So I hope you guys would look at this and take some of this into consideration when you make your final decision.
Thank you.
And I do want to say one thing. Stacy Williams' father-in-law is in ICU. They took him in.
Thank you.
And the other one that's going to be speaking, his wife is going
your
into
time is
labor.
up.
Oh,
If you
okay.
can-
So you can take those 2 off your list.
Oh, all right. Stacy Williams
And Matt Damon
and Matt Damon.
and Drew
Okay,
Doty hit a deer.
okay.
Is it Friday the 13th for me? Oh, my God.
Did you say Drew,
Drew hit a deer. The girl's here, so she's going to be,
so, and Drew Doty is not here?
right, he's coming in from Lawrence.
And Kinsley Sears? All right, thank you. Kinsley.
Okay. So, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kinsley Searles. I'm a junior at Shawnee Heights High School. I went through the Job Sharing Adults class in, I believe it was March of 2016. And I just want to discuss with you, the Job Sharing Adults class is more than just a jobs program, truly. The name is slightly deceiving, I'll admit. But when you go through the class, you receive a workbook, and it has many exercises that have to do with decision making and problem solving, and just other activities that make you understand consequences and help you with making good decisions in life in general. There's also a drug and alcohol portion where John Sims, who's a drug and alcohol counselor who's retired, comes through the class and explains different points about drugs and alcohol and kind of clarifies things for you. And personally, I never knew a lot about drugs and alcohol and things like that and like the true consequences. That's not something that's really taught a lot at my school. I'm not sure how it is at other schools, but so I learned a lot of things that I hadn't known before and more about the consequences of what your decisions can have. Another thing that was really interesting that I thought, so I attended the class, the class was held at Highland Park High School, and I had never been around really drug and alcohol situations. And when I went, and there were lots of kids, and the really cool things about the Job Sharing Adults class is it mixes like different kids from different backgrounds. So I never really had a situation where it was like a bad family situation. I'm from a good family situation. And so when I went in there and saw like these kids who have to get a job in order to eat and have to get a job to help their family pay bills, it kind of opened my eyes to the real consequences of drugs and alcohol. And it opened my eyes to like what's really happening throughout the world. And so the Job Sharing Adults class, like I said, is not just a jobs class. It's really truly more than that. And it's really necessary for our community and for our kids. And I can personally say that it helped me a lot. It taught me definitely a lot, and George is very committed to her role, and she really does teach a lot. She has lots of stories that help you like learn life lessons throughout the way, and they're fun while they're happening. So it's win-win. They're entertaining and educational. And she's just very committed in her role, and I really think that the Topeka Youth Project should get this drug and alcohol funding. The zero recommendation is, I agree with George, is harsh, and we really need it in order to go on and teach more kids what the skills they need to learn. So
Okay.
that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Kinsley. Thank you for your comments. And that completes the comments from that you had these others. And just to make sure, Stacy, Matt, and Drew are not here. Okay, thank you. That completes then those signed to speak on this issue. Council, is there other comments you wish to make? Okay, then we will proceed. This is discussion tonight only. We're receiving information, and then it comes back to the council for approval at a later point. We go to item B, discussion item.
B is discussion concerning a local amendment to the Uniform Public Offense Code concerning the sale or furnishing of cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, tobacco products, and liquid nicotine to any person under the age of 21.
And this is introduced by Councilwoman Schwartz, so you get to give us the introduction.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to start off with saying that I literally should not be here tonight. My cardiologist wanted to be in surgery yesterday, and I said that, no, this was really near and dear to my heart, so I really wanted to be here, and I hope I don't get emotional about this. My mother died when I was 14 of heart disease. My dad died when I was 19, when he was 51 of heart disease, and he smoked 2 packs a day. I took up smoking at 15. I smoked 33 years. I've kept telling myself back then, if I hadn't started so young, maybe I wouldn't have been a smoker, and I wouldn't be in the predicament I am now with my heart. I wear my nitro pills around my neck, on my purse. My husband knows what happens if I start having chest pain. So I'm not going to talk too much tonight because we have a lot of experts here that will talk. But I do want to stress to you, this is for the kids. We have heard over and over for the kids, and this is for the kids. So.
Okay, thank you. And if there are no other discussion, then we'll go to those who signed to speak, but go ahead, Councilman Jensen.
So I have a few questions I'm hoping to ask now.
Okay,
in hopes that the experts could answer them when they come up to their comments.
Excellent.
And I'd like to start by saying I absolutely support keeping kids from smoking. I think that is an incredibly important thing to do in our community. My questions on how to go about doing that, I'm trying to make sure that this is the right thing to do on its own, or whether or not it needs to be part of a more comprehensive program. And I'll premise that by saying I grew up in a dry county, and there was more alcohol in that county than you could shake a stick at. It was dry, and they had banned sales of alcohol in order to prevent, people getting in trouble with that, and that didn't work. And I don't know if that applies here or not. I just don't want to pass something that isn't going to solve what I absolutely agree is an incredibly important issue that we need to address. So having said that, my questions are, I understand there's some sort of ban in the county, and whether there is or not, why does that not apply to Topeka? Or does it, and we're just going a step beyond that? Is there any program funding from the taxes we get through the sale of cigarettes that then will be cut? And will we need to come up with different funding to help the prevention and recovery and that sort of thing as part of this? What will prevent children from driving to either out of the city into the county or to other counties to purchase cigarettes and bring them back? Does this need to be part of a larger education and prevention program? And if so, what is that? And how do we get that spun up and executed? Again, the goal is to keep kids from smoking, which is incredibly important. If this isn't enough on its own, I want to know what we can do, because I wholeheartedly agree we should. And my final question is, where has a ban like this worked in other communities? Is there definitive evidence that it has lowered the smoking of young adults? I'm hoping I'll get some answers. Thank you so much.
Okay, are there other questions, similar questions you want to ask prior to we going to our speakers? Okay, we have a number of speakers, and again, the first speaker is Tanya Dorf-Brunner, and the next speaker is Alice Weingartner. Again, if you're in the middle, would like, because we have about 12 speakers, so we're going to go through, not hurry you, you have appropriate time, but we do want to move it along as much as we can. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wolgast and members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight about the Tobacco 21 proposal. My name is Tanya Dorf-Brunner, and I am a Topeka resident. I'm also the executive director of Oral Health Kansas. We are a statewide advocacy organization located here in Topeka, dedicated to the importance of lifelong dental health through advocacy, public awareness, and education. So I don't know that I can answer the questions you posed, Councilman Jensen, directly, but I do think part of what I want to share today gets at part of your where you started with a dry county still has kids finding ways to not be dry. So I hope I can kind of get to a little bit of that. I think there's others that'll have a lot more expertise that can share some details on your questions. Tobacco use, of course, has a strong impact on negative oral health outcomes in addition to health outcomes. We know, for example, that smokers are about twice as likely to lose their teeth as compared to non-smokers due to gum recession. And according to the American Dental Association, smoking may actually be responsible for about 75% of gum disease among adults. Another really kind of shocking statistic is the single greatest risk factor for oral cancer is tobacco use. And what is sad is about half of people who are newly diagnosed with oral cancer will be alive in 5 years. It's one of the most dangerous forms of cancer, and people don't survive it. But it's not all bad news. Cigarette sales to people under 21 account for only about 2% of sales in terms of dollars. But about 90%, as Councilwoman Schwartz mentioned, about 90% of smokers start before the age of 21. This means that increasing the minimum age of sale for tobacco products from 18 to 21 would affect 9 out of every 10 new smokers. So this is the point I kind of wanted to make for you, Councilman Jensen, that according to the Centers for Disease Control, youth are more likely to use tobacco if they see that tobacco is acceptable, if they see that it's normal among their peers, and making it harder for youth to get those tobacco products is going to make it harder for them to see that tobacco is normal or acceptable. So I'd like to just share one personal story from our organization about the impact of tobacco use on a young person. One of our former coworkers lost his 32-year-old son-in-law to oral cancer. His son-in-law began chewing tobacco at age 9, and then he was diagnosed with oral cancer in his early 20s. He underwent radiation treatment and surgery, and he was eventually disfigured to the point, he lost his jaw. He was disfigured to the point of not being able to even eat. So even with all that treatment he received, he died not long after being diagnosed because of the smokeless tobacco. So we believe, at Oral Health Kansas, we believe in a brighter future in Topeka, and that's why we support Tobacco 21. We really urge the council to consider joining the 19 other cities in Kansas that have already adopted Tobacco 21, in addition to Shawnee County itself, and adopt this ordinance. I'll have you to answer any questions, but I could answer just quickly tell you that a handful of the communities in Kansas that have adopted this are several of the communities in Johnson County, Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, the unified government, Iola, Garden City, Lansing, Leavenworth. A number of cities have done this, and we think that it's time for Topeka to join. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next is Alice Weingartner, to be followed by Tracy Russell.
Good evening, Mayor Walgast and council members. My name is Alice Weingartner. I'm the Director of Community Development with Grace Med Health Clinic here in Topeka. And I do thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on Tobacco 21 resolution. At Grace Med, we always encourage people to either reduce or stop using tobacco products altogether. With our population right now primarily being adults, we see the impact of smoking and tobacco use and what it does to our patients. About 29% of our patients are assessed as smokers, and we do provide intervention for them as well. Tobacco use is one of 3 primary risk factors that can contribute to a number of chronic conditions, as Councilwoman Schwartz has indicated: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, lung disease, and some cancers. And as we know, our county health rankings has shown that those are things that are impacting our community greatly. In case you're wondering, the other two risk factors are poor diet and lack of activity. Delaying someone's decision to start smoking or using tobacco products can delay the onset of these chronic conditions, and it may even prevent them altogether if that person never starts to smoke. Tobacco 21 would have a positive impact on the health and well-being of our youth. It could minimize the cost associated with long-term health issues, and it can also save lives. So we appreciate the support and the consideration of this resolution.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for your comments. Tracy Russell, to be followed by Misty Lechner.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Russell. I'm with the American Heart Association, and we are here in strong support of the T21 proposal. And I think Councilperson Schwartz probably conveyed more eloquently than I could why this is so important to the American Heart Association. We know that tobacco use is the single most preventable cause of death. We also know, as was stated previously, that 90% of smokers begin their habit by the age of 18. And that's why it's so important that we interrupt that supply chain early. And what we're talking about is not just 18-year-olds smoking. We're talking about them supplying products to 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And that it's critically important that we do what we can to halt this supply. And Councilman Jensen, I think I can answer a few of your questions. I've worked in tobacco prevention for a long time, and what we've primarily focused on as a way to keep kids from smoking is clean indoor air. That's number one, and that was certainly something that Topeka took a lead on before we had a statewide law. What we also focus on are tobacco taxes, because we know that the more expensive cigarettes are, the greatest impact is on children. They don't have the means to purchase at that point. And then the third item has been prevention and cessation. This certainly falls into the prevention category. And what we have been trying to do is to get the state to commit more funds for prevention and cessation so that we can truly have a significant impact. And, you know, often we're talking about, at least at the State House, we hear about the cessation portion of that without as much emphasis on prevention. Why wouldn't we stop this before it ever starts, rather than trying to break the addiction once it's in place? So I think those have been the big three, but we have seen a history on tobacco control of local governments taking the lead, and then the state follows suit. You build a groundswell of support, and it changes the culture within your state. And we've seen that time and time again. One of the first cities to adopt this was in Massachusetts. It was Needham, Massachusetts. They adopted this in 2005. They have seen a 50% reduction in 18-year-olds smoking. NEEDHAM. And I think what's important to note is they were the first within their county and within their region to adopt this policy, and so they heard similar arguments in terms of, well, what's it going to stop from kids just going to a different jurisdiction? But they have seen the reduction, and what has happened is other communities around them have followed suit, rather than, you know, they took the lead and other communities followed because they saw what a benefit it was. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and hopefully answered some of your questions.
Thank you for your comments,
Thank you.
Tracy. Misty Lechner, to be followed by Yasmari Rodriguez.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Wolgast. I'd like to thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak with you in support of the Tobacco 21 ordinance. My name is Misty Lechner. I actually moved to Topeka from a small Kansas town in 2002 when I came here to go to Washburn University. And since then, I have been an active member of this community. I volunteer my time as the chair of the United Way of Greater Topeka's Eat, Move, Live Impact Council, as well as their advocacy committee, and the chair of Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, the community health coalition serving Topeka and Shawnee County. And I come to you today representing both of those organizations. Both organizations support evidence-based public health interventions that have a proven impact on the health, quality of life, and youth substance abuse rates in our community. Tobacco 21 ordinances are certainly going to meet all of those requirements for those organizations. Now I'm speaking on behalf of myself. As a resident of this community and as a young professional, I want Topeka to thrive. What many young professionals look for in a city to call their home is more than just avocado toast and soy milk lattes. We look for a place where we can walk and bike easily if we choose to, where we can breathe clean air free from tobacco smoke and other pollutants. We can get to a variety of social and cultural events that are open and easily accessible to all members of our society. And I certainly see this Tobacco 21 ordinance as being an important step in remaining relevant. As we try to compete with our neighboring cities, both to the east, to the west, for a younger, professional, and well-educated workforce. As a taxpayer, I also come to you because I want to live in a city where our healthcare costs don't continue to rise unnecessarily because of behaviors people choose to adopt, oftentimes as teenagers. Poor behaviors like smoking are things that we take up as teenagers when we feel free from consequences and we don't quite understand the ramifications of our actions. Now, I try very hard to exercise, eat right, and live a healthy life. And quite honestly, I don't really want my taxpayer dollars subsidizing the cost of lifelong smokers if I don't have to. And I don't want my contributions to my employer health care plan to do that as well. If I live a healthy life, I want the freedom to choose how I invest my dollars. I don't get the choice not to support the cost of smoking through healthcare. So this is why I choose to support this ordinance, so we can implement proven measures to reduce tobacco use. I would like to thank you for your time, and now I will stand for questions if you have any.
We really don't go to question and answer in public comment. It's the opportunity to present your views to us.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Misty. Yasmari Rodriguez, to be followed by Craig Barnes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Good evening. My name's Yasmari Rodriguez. I'm a lifelong resident of Topeka, Kansas. I'm a mother. I'm a Black Lives Matter activist. I'm a nonprofit worker, and I'm a concerned citizen. I'm here today because I'm tired, I'm angry, and I'm frustrated with the power structure that we currently have in this city. The same power structure that murders folks and protects them, the same structure that continues to oppress people of color and those that are less than, the structure that hides behind core and sunshine laws to further push their hidden agendas. The same structure that knows that corruption and lack of transparency exist in this city and condones their behavior because they're Midwest nice. The structure that knows that police brutality and implicit bias exist also, but they turn their backs on the public instead. The same structure that killed Dominique White. How do we change that? We change that because we need y'all as city council members to take a stand about what happened to Dominique White in the city. Y'all know that this was wrong.
I'm going to interrupt you, and actually, this is the discussion on this particular item.
That's not the discussion that I came here for, and I
know.
never asked to be on for the tobacco sales.
Okay, then that's the issue you should speak to. And we do have public comment at which you can discuss and you can present your views, such as you're doing right now, on any issue.
So then I would suggest that if it's all right with you all, because I never asked to be on tobacco sales, that I would
Okay.
be allowed to continue on what I have to speak on.
Okay, I think, and council, with that?
Is that okay?
You agree? We'll do that then. We'll let you speak
That was
here.
an error
because
with
that would be,
whoever was in your
and
office.
That's fine.
Thank
Okay,
you. I
then
appreciate
Please
that.
proceed, and we won't count that against her time, my interruption.
Thank you.
All right,
I
thank you.
appreciate that. In addition to y'all taking a stand on what happened to Dominique White in this city, we also need y'all to release those body cams, as well as the officer names.
Yes.
In addition to that, you guys know
Okay, just
with
excuse me, I
research-
have a point of order I have to recognize.
What we're talking about is the tobacco thing.
I never asked to be on the order for tobacco sales.
I
think
understand.
For
We're
comment,
letting
public comment for that.
We said she should really be in public comment.
Oh, we're gonna let her
But we're going to
proceed.
let her make,
I will do.
this is really a public comment item now on where she's addressing an issue that
Because
she
we
wants to address.
usually move those people to public
Yeah,
comment, but
right.
you're gonna, okay,
But
that's fine.
since you're,
I would appreciate that if you guys would take that up with your office as well, because you would never put me on public comment for tobacco
Okay.
sales.
all right,
Okay.
thank you, then.
Thank you, I
interrupt
appreciate
again.
that,
We'll-
letting
we'll
me continue. So I'm going to
continue.
go ahead and start over. So how do we change course? Again, like I said before, we need y'all to take a stand on what happened to Dominique White. There's no reason why you guys cannot release body cams, cannot release names. Most cities do that within 24 hours after an incident takes place. More importantly, quit playing games with the family. We've seen it played out in the media, and we're sick and we're tired of it. They need access to that information, and y'all should do that. Additionally, we need y'all to publicly make accessible the use of force policies. There should be no reason why, as a city, as a Topeka resident, I should have to go through the rigmarole in order for me to get access to those policies in my city. And y'all need to be open to that feedback on those policies. Y'all also need to do away with any sort of defunct groups in the city, whether it be the Chiefs Advisory Board, whether it be the Human Relations Commissions and other groups like them, because we know that there's sellouts on those groups that live in our communities just the same, and we also know that there's people that are on those groups that do nothing, absolutely nothing, to help the city that they're supposed to be serving. In addition to that, we need y'all to create a citizens review board that is objective third party that is going to review policy, procedure, and complaints, and we need that on the city official level as well as with TPD. Next, we need y'all to fire those that are perpetuating systemic racism and those that are institutionalized at TPD. And y'all know the ones who I'm talking about, the ones that have been there 10, 20, 30 years, the ones that are part of the Good Old Boys Club. Get rid of them. In addition to that, we need y'all to hire a minority police chief from the outside, somebody who is capable, somebody who is qualified, and somebody who is not afraid to upset the norm. And that is just a start. And that is just a start. Now, let me say this. I'm not anti-police, nor am I anti-officials, but what I am telling you is I am anti-no accountability, I am anti-no responsibility, and I am anti-indifference, and that's exactly what I've seen from all of you folks here. The wounds that were created here, they're not going to heal themselves, and I think y'all know that. Just as well, you guys know that the same mind frame that creates situations, you can't fix them in the same mind frame. You guys have to do a new thing. We have to do a new thing in this city in order to create progressive change. So my call to action to you all is this. What are you going to do? Are you going to continue to hide behind your positions and sell out this community with your silence and indifference? Or are you going to do something in order to protect all of the citizens in the city of Topeka, not just the ones that you favor, not just the ones that sit with the city of Topeka, and not just the ones that are with law enforcement officials? And that's what y'all need to do today. So I would implore you to do that. Let me say one other comment. I've reached out to a majority of you guys on this panel today.
Okay, now your
I've only
time
heard
is
back
up.
from a few of
Mr.
you.
Evans.
I would hope that you guys would do differently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Craig Barnes, to be followed by Linda Oakes.
Good evening, Mayor Wolgass and members of the council. First off, thank you so much for the time to talk to you guys today about Tobacco 21. My name is Craig Barnes. I'm here as a resident of Topeka and also as a local public health advocate to speak in support of the Tobacco 21 ordinance. I implore you not only to think of the here and the now, but the future. It was kind of mentioned earlier. This is really here for the kids. As it stands now, the current generation of adolescents and young adults will actually be the first generation of kids that will not outlive their parents. As a brand new father myself, that's a very disturbing thought. I do not want to be the father of a son who I have to bury because he takes up and has access to tobacco products at a young age. And really, there's a lot of health indicators that lead to that statement, but the number one health indicator that is shown in our community that leads to our poor health status is the number of individuals who use tobacco products here in our community. So data actually from USD 501, Topeka Public Schools, shows that in 2017, 98% of the seniors turned 18 before they graduated high school. 98%. And as it is now, if they're 18, they're able to purchase legally tobacco products. And we know, evidence again shows, that the number one means of source for tobacco products to those adolescents is their peers. And so if we have that many seniors in the Topeka Public Schools that are already 18, that before they graduate, easy access, again, for the adolescents. All right? Preventing tobacco use requires a narrow focus on the critical years between 13 and 21, when experimentation really turns into a habit. Unfortunately, most youth who experiment with tobacco acquire cigarettes from their friends, as I mentioned. And so what we need to do is see that age increase. So by increasing that legal age to purchase tobacco to 21, we can have a dramatic impact on the access to tobacco in our schools, which evidence shows will ultimately lead to a decrease in tobacco addiction among our youth and those older. Additionally, it is important to note that cigarette sales to individuals under 21 years of age actually only account for 2% of total sales in the United States, and research shows that associated ancillary sales will not be affected at all. Actually, lower smoking rates are better for businesses, and according to the 2014 Surgeon General's report, cities that create fewer smokers will have higher socioeconomic status, better health status, better jobs, and a better quality of life for all of its residents. Something that would go a long way to help recruit additional businesses here to our community. There's a lot of positive momentum happening in our community already around tobacco cessation. Recently, Washburn University has become a smoke-free campus. The Topeka Housing Authority has become the first public housing authority in the state of Kansas to go 100% tobacco-free. And actually recently, and just 2 months ago, they actually won a Corporate Services Award through the Kansas Public Health Association for their work in that aspect. Not only that, but this council actually added e-cigarettes to its smoking ban just a handful of years ago. So it's great to see that the City Council has already taken the initiative to further and help on the tobacco use prevention efforts. The bottom line is Tobacco 21 will help prevent addiction so kids today can live longer, healthier lives. I stand firmly in support of the Tobacco 21 effort, and I hope that you will as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Craig, for your comments. Linda Oakes, to be followed by Christy Pankratz.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am Linda Oakes, and I am the director of the Shawnee County Health Department. Last March, the annual county health rankings were released, and Shawnee County fell 14 places from the previous year to number 65 out of the 102 counties that are used in this report. So what caused Shawnee County to fall so low? There are multiple measures that go into this report, but of course I want to talk about one of the main drivers, and that's the adult smoking rate. The adult smoking rate for Shawnee County, the most recent one, is 22%, compared to 18% for Kansas and 17% for the U.S. But the rate for Shawnee County does not tell the whole story. And I did bring a map. I'm old school. I brought a poster. Good thing I did. Yeah, this is Vanna.
Put it over next to there, and then it will go on the television easier, like that.
Okay,
There you are.
Turn it around, maybe?
No, just, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So in this is a map of Topeka and the adult smoking rates. And so the light area, my pointer's not working, the lighter areas are the lowest rates, and they run around 16%. The darkest areas are the highest smoking rates in Topeka. They run 35 to 37%. So I find that very interesting and distressing at how high some of the rates are in our county. Thank you, Craig. So these rates are the reason that the health department wants to increase the legal age to purchase tobacco products to 21. And what does this have to do with the adult smoking rate? So you've already heard that 90% of adult smokers started before the age of 21. 90%. If there's anything we can do to make it more difficult for teens to obtain tobacco products, we can prevent a lot of people from starting to smoke. Most adult smokers will tell you they wish they had never started. Many organizations in Topeka are supporting this ordinance, including Stormont Vale Health, the Shawnee County District Attorney, Vallejo Behavioral Health, Family Service and Guidance Center, the Boys and Girls Club, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Grace Med. Shawnee County has already passed the ordinance in the unincorporated parts of Shawnee County, and my understanding is that it's just the unincorporated parts, so those retailers. So I urge you to join the over 260 cities and counties in 18 states across the country who've already passed a Tobacco 21 ordinance. So, recently, I was looking on the web and I found a report from U.S. News and World Report with an article that was entitled Health Buzz. These are the least healthy cities in each state. Topeka was listed as the unhealthiest city in Kansas, and tobacco was one of the reasons. We all know that companies wanting to find new cities to locate read these articles, and people who are considering moving to our area read these articles. We heard Misty talk about what young people are looking for. This is an opportunity to put Topeka in the news for doing something positive to help improve the health of our city. And the health department would be of assistance to the retailers. This is a copy of the sign that we have made for the county retailers. We do have grant money to help with this, and also training of the retailers. So this is a step. It won't fix the county health ranking in a year. It will take many years to improve the health of our community, but it is a step in the right direction. It's prevention, and I think it's good public health policy. So I want to support the other good work that's happening in our community and take this step, and give every person in Topeka and Shawnee County the chance to live the healthiest life possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your comments. Christy Pankrantz, to be followed by Spencer Duncan.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Thank you for having me here. My name is Christy Pankratz, and I oversee the Safe Streets and Prevention Services programs of Prevention and Recovery Services. We were here about 2 years ago with Councilwoman Schwartz to introduce the e-cigarette to the Clean Indoor Air Ordinance, and we thank you so much for supporting that. And we're also here in support of this issue. In prevention is a little hard. How do you stop a kid from using a substance, which you brought up earlier? Well, it takes all of us doing different things. It takes talking to kids, which we do. It takes talking to parents, which a lot of agencies do, including us. It takes working with school systems to implement programs and outcomes. And it also takes the community coming together, such as you are right now, in support of this ordinance. And that's something that you guys can do, and I would encourage you to take action on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for your comments. Spencer Duncan. And then, Council, we had other people sign up here at the meeting tonight, so he will be followed by Mary Jane Hellebust.
I feel like
Welcome,
I'm alone
Spencer.
on this one, but here we go. I'm all right. I'm used to that. I am Spencer Duncan, citizen of Topeka. I also am the Government Affairs Director for the Kansas Vapor Association, a role I've had for several years now. So I am also here on their behalf. It's several hundred businesses across the state, including those here in the city of Topeka. I want to be clear that nobody in this room thinks tobacco is good. The question becomes, is it okay to sell it to youths? And let's be clear, that's already illegal. We're talking here today about adults, 18 to 20 years of age. If we want to have a conversation about what adulthood should be, let's have that conversation. But let's please keep that in mind, that these are not children that we're talking about. These are 18, 19, and 20-year-old individuals who are adults. I also want to point out that there are 5 states that have passed tobacco 21 laws and 250 municipalities across the country, and there is no data to support that these laws have reduced underage smoking. She mentioned Needham, Massachusetts. Yes, they enacted it and they have seen a reduction, but their own director of health policy is on record as saying it was mostly the other policies they put in place that helped that. They can't give it all to tobacco 21. And in fact, they had no empirical data before to actually see what the statistics were. So that's from their director themselves. E-cigarettes will also be harmed by this, and I want to point out that in countries like the United Kingdom, e-cigarettes are actually used to help people get off of tobacco products. They sit on the shelves along with gum and patches, and so you're not helping people who are 18, 19, and 20-year-old who want to get off of tobacco find another alternative to eventually get off, products that we are proud of the fact that they do that. I have some other things, and I will leave these with Brenda so she can pass them around some data. But I'm also going to say this, and although there are 19 municipalities, you don't have the authority to do this. All right, and I know that you've heard from the League of Municipalities who indicates you might. We disagree with that. We are going to challenge Shawnee County. I am here to tell you tonight, we will challenge the city of Topeka. As to why the other 19 municipalities haven't been challenged yet, nobody asked me, okay? That's the answer. They've asked me now, and so here I am telling you that that is going to... The state law is very clear in the sense that you can do things like add it to the smoking ban, but you don't have the authority to regulate the sale of the product. Whether you think that's terrible or not, go take that up down the street with your state legislature, and that's a conversation, again, we can all rationally have over there. But it's, if you want a parallel, you don't have the authority to lower the drinking age either, right? So if you want something that kind of gives you a parallel, that's a similar one. And so we will tell you now that we don't think you have the authority, whether you think that's right or wrong. We're here to tell you we're not just going to challenge the county, we'll also challenge the city if you pass this, and we're going to start looking at the other 19 counties. And I think the county heard from an attorney who's with KC's, Bob Alderson, telling them the same thing at the time, and you may hear from Bob, not tonight, but later. So we just wanted to bring that up also. I also want to tell you, there was one last thing somewhere on my list here. I would also like you to do an economic assessment impact on this. Because if you look at some of the counties in Kansas who have put this in place, they have lost sales tax revenue. And it has impacted some of the things they've tried to do with other programs. So I would talk to the Iolas of the world who have seen some of that impact, and please do an economic assessment to understand what the impact will be to the small business owners who sell this, to your bottom line when it comes to sales tax, and what that overall impact will be. I think that that does have to factor into it, to this decision. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Spencer, for your comments. Next is Mary Jane Hellebust, to be followed by Gianfranco Pisano.
Hello. My name is Mary Jane Hellebust. I live at 1516 Southwest Boswell, and I'm in Mr. Jensen's district. I spent about 16 years with Tobacco Free Kansas Coalition, where their focus was on tobacco prevention and cessation. A lot of information from the previous speaker. I just wanted to point out again that we look at tobacco use as being a pediatric and adolescent disease. And yes, you know, most people are under 21 when they start, and they're usually not sick then. They have to wait 10, 20, or 30 years. And that's when it hits, and that's when you start getting into the economic issues that are brought about. So tobacco use on its own is not a good thing. And to hit first, the e-cigarettes. And the concept of those being a cessation device is absolutely bizarre. How many people have you ever known who use e-cigarettes and all at once are off tobacco for the rest of their life? In most cases, what ends up happening, it becomes what we call dual use. You know, okay, I can't smoke a cigarette here, I'll do this. And they end up oftentimes staying with cigarettes, and the e-cigarettes, you know, fall by the wayside. And we also have to remember who's promulgating this stuff. These are tobacco companies. You know, and they can speak to the cessation effects of e-cigarettes, and we don't want kids to smoke, and golly Moses, 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds, hey, they're adults. They can't buy liquor in the state. You know, wouldn't it be easier for your convenience store clerks and others to know, hey, 21, no cigarettes, no booze? You know, so there are other ways of looking at this. One of the points, on tobacco companies, though, they're spilling their stuff here in this country, but do you know what they're doing in other countries? They are selling anything they can and promoting cigarettes all over the place. You know, so I mean, they look at it as a business opportunity, not as a health issue. You know, and so that is profound. One of the things that I might, we just recently had an unveiling, is that what you call it, a statue, of Crumbine, or Dr. Samuel Crumbine, prime advocate, you know, and his big thing was bat the fly, swat the fly. Swat the fly? Okay. Don't spit on the sidewalk. If he were alive today, his statement would be, his slogan would be, don't sell cigarettes and tobacco products to young people. It's not good for them. But we have to do more than just have a slogan. That's where you guys come in.
because you're into policies, and it's policies that make the difference. So we have policies so that you don't smoke or use tobacco on school grounds. You eliminate smoking, as Mr. Harmon is familiar with. We don't smoke at the zoo because it's not good for the animals, it's not good for the people. We have clean indoor air laws. We have taxes, to decrease that. The next policy area is youth access issues, and that means creeping that age of starting for kids up. And not too many kids with the price of gas are going to drive very, very far to buy cigarettes or to use an e-cigarette. They're not going to drive to, are they going to drive to Manhattan? How far out of town are they going to be driving, to get extra cigarettes? And if they're only making 2%, if they're only 2% of the sales right now, your clerks and your convenience folks are not interested in selling to kids. And right now, thanks to a WeCard, I think that's Philip Morris, we already know they're not supposed to check, they're supposed to check anybody under the age of 27. So I would urge you to pass this ordinance for the good, the vitality, and the health of Topeka.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Jane. The next speaker is Gianfranco Pisano, to be followed by Commissioner Archer. And you may correct my pronunciation of your name.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Gianfranco Pizzino, but I take no offense. I've been called all sorts of names with a name like mine in my life, and yours has not been the worst. So,
okay, thank you.
But thank you for allowing me to present a little bit of information. I will try to be brief and not to repeat all the information that you have already heard, but I would be remiss if, as your county health officer, if I didn't point out how severe the problem of smoking is in Shawnee County. You heard about our county rankings dropped, and the main reason for that was tobacco use. It's hard to know how many young people smoke. When I say young, I mean less than 18 years old, because we really don't have good statistics. But by some estimates from the Centers for Disease Control, about 20% of youth in Kansas smoke cigarettes or use tobacco products. And that is a big problem that we have. So we need to attack the problem. And why do we want to do that, among other things, by using the tobacco 21 restriction? First of all is to protect the people below 18. You heard that before. That's how they get their cigarettes. If from their classmates, in particular in high school, from their classmates, they can buy them and they share with them. And so it's a kind of indirect effect that by restricting the purchase authority or legal authority to sell cigarettes to people between 18 and 21, we are actually going to address people younger than 18. That's a critical age. The brain is still developing. Neural connections are still not fully formed. We absolutely must do anything we can to prevent people at that age to start smoking. The other reason we want to do that is for people between the age of 18 and 21. And yes, they're young adults, I understand that. But there is a history of restricting some activities for people in that age, including the most noticeable, of course, is sale of alcohol. When that restriction was introduced, there was a dramatic drop in the number of deaths from drunk driving. And we know now, decades after the fact, that one of the main reasons was that change in the legal age of purchase of alcohol. Is that going to avoid that all our kids are going to get no access to cigarettes whatsoever? Of course not. I mean, I have a son who just turned 21. He made no mystery before he was 21 that he could access alcohol, but it was harder. It was not as easy as walking in a store and say, hey, I want a bottle of the whiskey. He had to work for it. And most of all, the message has gotten to him, this is not right. So yeah, I'm still going to do it, but I know that this is not right. So it's a step in the right direction. If we want our city to be known as a clean, healthy place where people want to live, I think we need this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pizzano. Is that better? Thank you. Next, Commissioner Archer. You're next. We're glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. First, let me say to Karen, to Sylvia, to Tony, and Michelle, congratulations. Congratulations. And to Larry, Elaine, and Richard, good luck, and thank you from the city for your service to our community. It is recognized and really appreciated. You know, I was thinking about when I was first elected to the city council in 2009, we had an ordinance that came up. It was called the Clean Air Ordinance. And remember, before 2009, you could smoke in restaurants. And that was a toughie, and it was very controversial at the time. And I thought, you know, business owners have the right to do whatever they want to in their business. But then my constituents straightened me out. My constituents straightened me out. So I would like to respectfully ask for your support on this ordinance. I think it's very important. There's no downside to it. There's just upside. It will stop kids from smoking. There is no downside. It is all upside. Think about this. Shawnee County now is almost in the bottom third in the county health rankings. We have to take action. We have to do something. Think about it. Think about it very carefully. And again, I would respectfully ask for your support on this ordinance. It's good to see everybody again.
Thank you, Commissioner Archer. It's good to see you. You're welcome. Glad to have you here. Yes.
Could Commissioner Archer comment on what the county's ban is and where it applies
Okay,
and how
yeah.
that works, just as an education for us, if you would,
Very
please?
good point. You asked that earlier, the difference in the county's role in this.
Yeah, it is just in the unincorporated areas. And the interesting thing was my wife pointed out the Dillons at Urish and 29th Street. She said, they don't have a sign there saying, you know, you have to be 21. They're not enforcing it. The interesting thing is the Dillons there is in the Sherwood Improvement District. Oh. And we're going to reach out to them. We are going to have to reach out to Rossville and the other cities.
Excellent.
To pass the same thing. But the city of Topeka has an opportunity to be a leader.
And I think it's critically important that the county have that, because if you can just drive right outside the city limits,
Yes.
in 5 minutes you can be outside, then we're not really helping anything. We're just pushing people outside the community. But if with the county as a partner, now it's orders of magnitude more complicated, and the distance to travel and that sort of thing. It becomes a critically important partnership to make it successful.
Yes.
I'm pleased to hear you'd reach out to the other communities, because again, if you can be somewhere in 10 minutes to buy cigarettes, kids are going to do it.
Yes, that's right. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the public comment on this discussion item, and any other discussion the council has. Councilman Schwartz?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just kind of want to follow up on what we hear next week in the hearing, the social economic impact on healthcare. As a public health professional, before I can tell you that tobacco smoking has an impact on our economics and people with heart disease. I felt really bad when my heart went bad last year, and I knew that $30,000, it was more than $30,000, was going to be an impact on the city's health plan. I think anybody that has heart disease, and my siblings, none of them have had heart issues. It's because I smoked for 33 years, and I started at 15. I just really want to say that there is an economic impact. And if there's anything, other questions that the council members would have that we can get the experts to answer next week, other than social economic impact, please let me know, or please ask the question tonight.
Okay. And there is no meeting next week, so it'll be
December 6th.
in December at some point if it comes back on the agenda. Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know who to really address this to, but I was just reading the documentation for this discussion item, and they don't really talk about consuming tobacco products. It's purchasing the tobacco products. So are we also banning smoking for people that are under 21?
And I refer that to city attorney on the language in the in the
The way
ordinance?
it's, Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Cohen, the way it's written now, it talks about furnishing, selling, and buying for, providing. It doesn't talk about consuming. But if they don't have it, then they can't really
They
consume
could,
it.
so what we would do is prevent them from purchasing something
Correct.
that they can legally use. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilman Claire?
I too smoked for 25-plus years when they were 25 cents a pack. And I know if I, as a youngster, I only had enough money for the cigarettes. I wasn't going to drive anywhere because I didn't have money for cigarettes and gas. So I think this is a good step. And I also, teaching middle school, know that the frontal cortex of the brain that makes rational decisions is not developed until you're 25. So they might be, you might be an adult, but they are not, those rational decisions still have not developed yet. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Jensen?
Just quickly, first of all, would you explain that to my mother? Because that would justify so many of the decisions I made when I was growing up.
Okay. I believe we're coming
Well,
down,
so a legitimate
ending the
question
discussion
then.
here.
Can we add possession of it to that? If the goal, again, is to keep kids from smoking, if they can't buy it or possess it, then, in my opening comments, I talked about, are we going far enough to really impact the problem? Just a question, don't need an answer tonight, but I'm just wondering is, if we're really going to make an impact, is that the additional step that would do that? Thank you.
We look into that. Other comments? Going?
Just a question.
Councilman Keller?
What is the intent? We have opened up a lot of conversation, some pretty darn good questions. We've had some good testimony. I remember what we did with the smoking ban, which had involved some public hearings and so on. What is, with the discussion tonight, if that makes any difference, what's the calendar for this issue? If you could.
It'll be up to the city manager.
Well, I think the intent at this point, based on how it was brought forward, was that it would be considered for approval at the December 5th meeting.
Okay.
At current, that's what we were looking at for a schedule.
So if there are questions, we need to get those to the city and so that we can get answers back on anything pertaining to this. Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spencer brought up a great question, if we're allowed to do that. And I would like to know as soon as possible if we're allowed to that. Just like we can't do anything about the drinking age level. So, and he kind of put that in perspective. So I'd like to know that as soon as possible and not the day of that we're going to vote on that, because I think that would be a big impact if we're allowed to do that. I think we all want to support this, but I want to make sure that we can do that.
Yes, we'll get a confirmation by the next meeting. And actually, there's differing opinion on that, and so we'll work through relative to give you the best information that we have relative to that case.
You said by the next meeting?
Well, I mean, yes, we'll get it sooner than that.
Yeah,
yes.
because I want to be able to look at that and have another
Understood.
opinion,
That was
not
it.
by the next meeting, but
Yes,
before
ma'am.
that, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we've completed the discussion. On that discussion item, we next go to item C, discussion. The clerk would read.
C is discussion regarding the legislative priorities identified by the governing body to be addressed or monitored during the 2018 legislative session.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, governing body, we know that we're fast approaching the next legislative session. Whitney Dameron is here tonight to present and discuss our 2018 legislative priorities.
Mr. Dameron.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council, City Manager Trout, members of the city staff. Happy to be here tonight, talk about a little bit about 2017, but leading into the 2018 legislative session and have that conversation about the city's priorities for the upcoming legislative session. First of all, December 4th, the Shawnee County delegation will meet in the State House. They invite interested groups to come in and talk about their legislative interests and concerns. We are on that agenda. The meeting starts at 9. I believe we are on at about 9:15, so we rolled pretty quickly that day, or 9:30, excuse me. The last legislative session, obviously, the state has had some budget challenges. There was significant debate on tax policy. There was a tax bill passed which is projected to increase state revenues by $591 million in the fiscal year we're in now, and then by $633 million in the next fiscal year. That would begin to get the state's budget back on track from where it's been in the past. However, we have the specter of a Supreme Court decision on school finance that's held that the state is not adequately nor equitably financing K through 12 education. They've given the legislature until April 30th, 2018 to address that matter. They did not put a dollar figure on that, but estimates are it could be as much as $500 million. Is that in an immediate funding requirement? Is that in something that could be phased in over a period of time? Is that in something that could be negotiated with the plaintiffs? It remains to be seen, but that is certainly something the legislature will have to consider and address next legislative session, and probably be the thing that hangs over about everything they talk about next year. 2017 and 2015 legislative sessions both lasted about 115 days, which were records. The one in between that, 2016, was 77 days. The legislature is hopeful to have a short session next year, which would require pretty serious consideration of matters rather quickly. Probably a lot of things get pushed aside if they try to meet that kind of a deadline. Don't know if they can address the school finance issue in that short of a time frame. They did create a new special interim education task force to try to come up with some ideas on how to address the K through 12 litigation. One of the ideas likely to come out of that is to seek to amend the Constitution, take out the suitability language in the state constitution. That would take a 2/3 majority of both the House and the Senate and then go to a public vote. That is a very significant challenge in the legislative process, getting 2/3 to agree on anything, especially with the makeup of the legislature as it's changed over the last election cycle. So that is something that will be out there and probably take up quite a bit of the legislature's time. The last couple of years, City of Topeka has been supporting legislation to try to deal with the abandoned housing issue. We really became actively involved 2 years ago, started kind of taking an operational position on that bill, trying to draft it and address concerns that the other opponents and some neutral parties had. We made a lot of progress a couple of years ago. We actually were successful in passing the bill. In 2016, it was vetoed by the governor. So that presented challenges going into 2017 legislative session. Had interesting debate, both House and the Senate, had bill in the Senate to the floor a couple of times. Ultimately, friction on the legislation and other issues took over. It did not pass. There is a commitment from both the House and the Senate jurisdictional committee chairs to revisit the issue in 2018. I have shared information with the stakeholders who've been involved with that and also with the City of Topeka, talking about perhaps some areas to be tweaked, to take a look at, that we might attempt to try to streamline that issue and again, continue to mitigate opposition. It does present a challenge with certain people in the legislative process because of their position on property rights. And it's been difficult convincing them of the importance of the property rights of people who live next to abandoned homes, but we continue to endeavor in that regard. A couple of other issues that the city may want to take a look at. I was given a heads up by Assistant City Manager Gerber about mental health issues. I know that's been in the paper in Topeka. It's been for the City of Topeka and other communities. I reached out to Senator Laura Kelly and talked about mental health funding, and she shared with me some stakeholders that have been meeting and are looking to make a proposal to the legislature on increasing funding for mental health. That would be a very significant challenge in the legislative process, getting 2/3 to agree on anything, especially with the makeup of the legislature. So that is something that certain mental health funding, which could have a positive impact for City of Topeka, Shawnee County, and the expenditures that they have to make. So as that gets put together, that will be something that I will bring back to the city, and the city may want to formally endorse that kind of a proposal. 2017 legislative session, there was a change made in liquor laws, which goes into effect April 1 of 2019, and that would be to allow for the sale of up to 6% alcohol content beer in typically where you have convenience stores, grocery stores, and the like. One of the issues not addressed in that bill is tax policy. Typically, the stronger alcohol products over 3.2 cereal malt beverage products would be taxed at a state enforcement tax rate, 8%. That money would come to the state. It does get shared back locally. You saw that earlier in your agenda today, how some of that money comes back. But what goes to the state doesn't necessarily come back. League of Municipalities and some of the other parties involved have suggested that the way to deal with that issue might be to simply levy the local sales tax on those products, and then the cities would get their local share, typically their city, their county revenues, and it wouldn't be an exact match, but I think that's the approach the League of Kansas Municipalities would like to take. I think the position of the people involved in the alcohol debate is whatever you want to do, we'll generally get in line and we will support that. There's a commitment to try to help get that passed next session. It potentially has some impact for the city of Topeka, and that's why I brought it to your attention in the document that I sent to the city last week. The League of Kansas Municipalities would again like to see some changes in the tax lid statutes. Probably the area that could be addressed and receive a signature of a governor in 2018 would be related to the procedures on the election, how the budget's certified, and the protest petition and so forth. I know the League in some cities would like to have the tax lid language subject to a protest petition as opposed to an automatic vote. That issue was introduced in 2017. It was not really scheduled for substantive hearings, but I think the League would like to push that issue again. The League has supported expansion of Medicaid. It's a challenging environment given the governor that we have and the governor we're likely to have in 2018 to see that legislation passed, but that is an issue that will be out there. We may see some legislation regarding asset forfeiture and trying to change the mix of what happens to asset forfeiture funds, local law enforcement share, state, et cetera. That is being studied by Judicial Council, and they'll make recommendations back to the legislature for the next legislative session. KDOT has talked about looking at a new comprehensive transportation program. We've had 3 in our state, 89, 99, and 2010. As cities know, much of the funding, or a lot of the funding, at least of the most recent transportation program, it's an $8.5 billion program, more than $2 billion has been diverted for other things to help with the state budget. A lot of the usual stakeholders, cities, counties, chambers, and et cetera, are not too excited about, at least from what we've seen to date, about a new transportation program until we get some clarity on what projects would be funded, what the funding mechanisms were, and what the state's role would be in that program. Would they be supportive of certain revenue sources or enhancements for a transportation program? So that remains to be seen how KDOT will approach that, and if they actually try to bring something up, at least for study in 2018. There's an interim committee looking at local economic development programs, STAR Bond, TIF, Community Improvement District, Transportation Improvement District. We could see some recommendations to the legislature next year coming out of that. That committee meets here in the next couple of weeks. Those are the highlights of kind of the things we've been involved with and the things that we've paid attention to historically, and certainly happy to stand for questions.
Okay. Council, questions, comments, or this is our chance to give our views on legislative items. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dameron, first of all, thank you for your reports. The biggest thing I hear when I go to neighborhood meetings are these abandoned houses. And usually what they are, and I heard you say the opposition is usually people that have a strong view on property rights. But just last night, there was an issue where the person died and there's no heirs. And now we have to wait 3 years and let this house basically, fall to pieces until it's been 3 years and no tax has been paid, and only then can it be auctioned off. And you spoke about maybe streamlining what we're asking for. Is it possible maybe to start with baby steps? Maybe we just say if there's a house that's been, the person's deceased, no heirs. Is it possible to get something through this year just to address that?
Even without heirs, I think you have issues with probate court. I would be happy to visit with the city attorney's office and with Sasha and talk about some of those kinds of proposals. I know Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas has taken a more aggressive approach to the abandoned housing issue and circulated some recommendations for some things that they're doing that I think the city's taking a look at as well. Unified Government, I've worked with them before, and sometimes they take the approach of you ask for forgiveness, not permission, and they're pretty aggressive. They have a lot of properties, and the neighbors put the pressure on their elected officials just like they do here. But certainly, we would like to do anything we can to expedite that process.
Yeah, that would be great, because here we are, we have a nice house, $100,000 house, $150,000 house, and meanwhile we're paying money to build these other houses a block away from them, and it's just silly.
Unfortunately, the condition that they end up in when you get control of that, you have to demolish them, which means the city has the opportunity to mow it forever.
Yeah.
Forever's a long time.
Thank you.
Councilman Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to, Tony, I want to follow up on your question. And I've been practicing law for 35 years, working on probate estates, and I've never encountered an estate with a decedent without heirs. There are always heirs, because Kansas has what we call to identify heirs within the 6th degree of consanguinity.
Sure.
And there's always heirs. They may not be readily apparent. They may not be close relatives, but I've never seen anybody who doesn't have heirs. You may have to look for them, and there are search firms out there that will do heir searches. So I'm not trying to discount the scenario you raised, but even if that is true, it would be such a very, very small number that I can't see the legislature enacting something just to address one or two maybe, but I think it'd be extremely, like I said, I've never seen a case where there's not heirs. You can always find them.
It's just frustrating. We have literally probably 10 houses in our district, and they're nice houses.
Right.
And they literally fall apart before we can sell them, and nobody wants them, and it's just such a waste.
I know, and I'm not trying to minimize
Yeah, no,
the problem,
I
Tony.
appreciate that,
Yeah, it's
your
just,
comments.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we weren't going down a rabbit hole. So
No,
thank you, Your
I
Honor.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And these are the issues we've worked on with this for 5 years or so, and all these issues. And Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. So along the same couple lines, I'm wondering what the role of eminent domain is in here. It seems to me that we've waited decades for solutions to come out of the State House, and the solutions that come are not fast enough to react to market conditions and to, things deteriorating. So how does our ability to use eminent domain to take a property that's not being cared for and impacting the surrounding properties fit into what the folks in the state are proposing? Because what I've seen, what we're going to get is not a realistic solution in order to address some of these issues that are creating serious problems now. And my second part of that is, so the flip side of that is, if we can get these properties into the hands of people, what kind of incentives are available to get them back up into a livable condition? I mean, a lot of these houses that have sat for years and years because of this process are then too expensive to even get into a livable condition, and the only option is to tear them down, and then, again, we're stuck with the city mowing properties forever. sort of two aspects of it. What can we do to accelerate the process on our own without the state? I appreciate their efforts, but I am not confident we're going to get a solution at all. And then, if we could, is there any sort of plan and discussion for how do we, incentivize these old homes and these core development or these core areas to redevelop?
We fight the eminent domain issue in the legislative process with this legislation. This is eminent domain, this is condemnation. You go back a decade or more, the New London, Kelo versus New London case back east that kind of set the tone and then led to a number of states adopting restrictions on the use of eminent domain for economic development purposes, which is what this is described as.
Well, I wouldn't consider this economic development at all.
Otherwise, your government purpose has to hit very specific and narrow issues before you can use eminent domain. Public right-of-way, streets, utilities, et cetera. But, conversely, the cities do have some authority to deal with dangerous structures. The way to deal with them is they tear them down.
And see, that's not a good solution.
Not a positive option. The way we've drafted the legislation, the way it's evolved, it would allow a city to work with a nonprofit. I visited with Sasha Hain with the city, and there's the possibility to bring down potentially some federal dollars to provide some incentives to work with some nonprofits. And you have this process that's created to get someone into the property, to make some improvements, bring it up to code, and then you have a process also to get back in front of the judge and get a deed on that property so that the person who owns it can go out, own it, get a mortgage or whatever they need to do to maintain it and become a tax-paying citizen. So, if we can get it to that point, I think there are some options. But
What about for larger properties? Because that works well for a certain size of property.
Some cities have used KCK, Wyandotte County, use land banks to go out and try to acquire properties, put them into a land bank. City of Topeka has that authority to do that. We passed that legislation for the city several years ago. So that is an option as well.
It's also still a fairly long timetable for that, though, is my understanding.
Kansas has a number of restrictions to protect individual property rights. And that also applies in cases where you have lenders, mortgages, rights to redemption, and so forth. So it is very cumbersome unless you can convince them to throw the keys on the table and walk away from the property.
I'm not discounting the rights of the property owners, but the people who live next door also have property rights. And none of this legislation addresses their right to have a home, live next to something nice. I mean, we have absolutely no way at this point of addressing a house that meets code that's next to, or that somebody's living next to. And for years, we've told them, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do, and people are getting frustrated with that. And I realize a lot of this is driven from state law, but we can't just keep telling them, I'm sorry, we have no tool set for that. So, property owners that have nice homes next to not so nice homes, what are their property rights?
Well, we had, some of the opponents for this legislation had kind of an interesting proposal last session, and they brought it up on the floor of the Senate and shopped that, and that was that if you have a property that's deemed abandoned, that you immediately can go in, seek court action to take possession of that up and put it up for sale under the same process of a foreclosure. That would expedite the process significantly. My concern with that proposal, and I had the discussion with some of the people who are pushing that, I said, that flies in the face of everything we've tried to do with this bill to protect property rights. And you're now telling me you want to expedite the removal of property from the rightful owners. I'm with you. We'll do it. I don't think we get 21 to 63 votes and the signature of the governor, so I didn't think they were serious about the proposal, but I think it sounded good when they stood up on the floor of the Senate and said, let's just do it this way. And I don't think the people who have supported the legislation that we have and who passed it, quite frankly, to the governor, thought they were serious either.
So what do you think the balance is then?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass.
I'm sorry, I thought he was still.
So what's the balance then? I mean, people are in real struggles here, and I haven't heard a solution out of anybody. Not to really think it's you, but I can't get an answer to these people's
I think that's
problems.
the challenge, and I think,
So,
one of the suggestions that I've had was, there's a person in the revisor's office who's written books on home rule authority. Take a look at that and see what you can do.
I've
And
been
ask
told
for
we don't have
forgiveness,
any
not
home rule
permission.
authority in this case.
And just be aggressive on using the inherent power that cities have. And some cities are doing that, some are not. And it's not a criticism, but I think you have, legal counsel that looks at things and says, we will try this, and others say, our legal opinion is you can't do that. And so it creates challenges.
Councilwoman De La Isla.
So before I go to my statement, I'll just tell you, Sasha, sorry for everything that we have to deal with at the city. Because this is pretty much a discussion that we have to have over and over with our constituents. It is not that the city is lackadaisical with regards to our enforcement of code. It's the fact that we are held back by the state regulations that tell us that we cannot take away the properties, even though they're abandoned and destroyed, unless we can prove that the property is about to be a danger to the neighborhood, then we can't do anything. And by that point in time, like you said, we end up inheriting a whole bunch of lots that we have to mow for the rest of our lives, which is atrocious. It's atrocious. It's not that we don't care and we don't want to solve the code enforcement issue. This 20 to 30-minute conversation is indicative of how challenging it is, because we have layers of red tape over us that don't allow us to do what we want to do. However, I will ask you, because with my history of Habitat, I remember that we were told at one point in time when a house was left abandoned, that as the lending entity, should we find out that that house was abandoned, we were then able to take that action and protect that property. What are we doing at the state level to ask then the banks to take responsibility, and then those banks to have fines if they're not taking care of those properties that are being left behind?
good point.
The challenges that I know that the city of Topeka has ran into and others is, by and large, your lenders that have properties like that are not from Kansas. And you have an inability either to perfect service of process, or if you can get them to accept some kind of a process, to get them to come back to Kansas and stand in front of a judge. Their legal position is, we don't own the property, you can't fine us, it's the land or it's the property owner, and that's where the fine attaches to. You bring that legislation to the State House, and you'll get the attention of the Kansas Bankers Association very quickly.
Whatever we need to do.
Okay. Other areas, Councilman Hiller?
Well, if I could just follow that one, it's funny, because I was going to, Whitney and I have talked about this on and off, and I was going to just ask you, is this worth continuing to pursue? Because in a number of the iterations, well, this at the state level, as we have been, because in a number of the iterations along the way, it sounded good and it made people feel good, but it was not likely to solve more than 1 or 2 houses a year. And so maybe we don't have to talk that through any further tonight. We're also talking about a legislative agenda that I guess typically has to do with the state. But I will tell you that in District 1, one of the things we've discovered, and Commissioner Archer has already departed this evening, but one of the things we did do a few years ago at the state legislature was roll back the number of years that the county had to hold a property before they put it on tax sale, and rolled it back to 3 years. And what we learned, because I had people waiting to pick up properties so they could get them rehabbed and back on the market, was that the county has decided they've got too many properties, and they are holding properties in my neighborhood anyway because they aren't worth so much, and so they've decided to keep them on the rolls a little longer so that the ticket moves up a little bit. And I think we, as a city, in as collegial way as we can, need to get the county to do more than 1 tax sale a year if that's what it takes. So these properties, because the ones that really are abandoned, nobody's paying the taxes on. And so that makes it a little easier than some of the other ones. And we've got properties sitting there that would have turned and would be rehabbed. So maybe with Whitney's help and a discussion just on that issue with staff as well, we could look at what all the different avenues are and make sure we're investing our efforts in something that is going to have some results.
right.
I have a couple of other things for the agenda when this is
Are
exhausted.
we about through with this item that we can go on to other aspects of the legislative agenda? Okay.
The others would be, obviously, from the discussion this evening, if there's some research into the smoking issue as to whether what we should be pursuing the state level, I hope we can do that. I have not had time to pre-discuss the issues that I have with Whitney or anybody else, and so they may require some research. The first category of suggestions would be in the arena of elections. And there are a couple things under that. One, as most people know, when my campaign started this time, the issue of residency of a candidate arose. I'm not going to revisit that in particular, but what I learned is that whereas residency is defined, for instance, in domestic law about spouses and children in need of care and all that sort of stuff, and it's sort of what most of us would think. You live there, you sleep there, you eat there. It is not defined in the election law. And sort of the way people have done business is, well, wherever you say you live, we accept that. Our city ordinance says you have to live in the district at the time that you file and throughout your term of service. But in our local ordinance, it's not defined further either. And so with the state taking over our elections, they took no responsibility for what our local ordinance said. So I would suggest that we look into either getting residency defined at the state level, more like it is in domestic law, in the state law, or at least make sure that we have legislation such that the state would honor our local ordinance and define residency a little bit better at the local level. Second, the state changed the law about where people could put campaign signs when they did their overhaul. And now it allows signs in what we call the parking, in the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the street. That's fine, but I looked around as it got close to Election Day and saw signs in the parking in places that I was certain the property owner had not been consulted and would not have agreed. And so I did a little checking, and I did that with Mary, actually, with the city attorney's office, and it turns out that the way the law is written, you could go put yard signs in any right-of-way along any street, anywhere, as long as you're not in maybe the corner, the sight line on the corner. And so I think that that should be changed, so that, and whether that's in brief research, that would either be to say in the state law that it can be out there in the parking with the permission of the adjacent property owner, or the property owner who's responsible to maintain that parking, or clarify, what the state basically did was overrode home rule and said even though we said people couldn't have signs in the parking, we had to let it happen, would be to make some sort of amendment back to let the local government decide where campaign signs could be and what the conditions would be. Also, I don't know if the league is planning to review the issue of local government elections in the fall, but it was real interesting to go through that the first time. And I just wondered, again, maybe not the legislature, but the league or somebody to look at, a 5-month campaign time for local offices. Obviously, what we saw was that the state and federal campaigns were beginning before our election even occurred. There was some confusion there. I don't know if anybody else is interested in seeing that reviewed, but it was very interesting to go through it. So 3 election things. Alcohol. We had particularly some folks involved with downtown. Mike Morse is one of them, a coalition that was involved in successfully getting the legislature to go at least down the line for creating zones that people could go out of one venue and into another with a beverage appropriately described. However, one of the things we've wanted to do in downtown as well as in Noto, at least those are the 2 I'm familiar with, is for people to be able to go throughout that zone without having to close the street. And apparently, the new law still wouldn't allow that zone with the street, traffic still in the street. So that's about as much. I know that people are saying, ooh, we're not quite where we wanted to be. It would probably require some information for me and maybe some research to see if it was timely or what the problems were with going a little bit farther than we have for entertainment districts, but I wanted to bring it up. The third category is driver's licenses. My experience with this is anecdotal. One of our judges from here in Shawnee County was hit and hurt pretty badly on her bicycle by an 89-year-old lady who had actually stopped at a crosswalk and then started going anyway and ran over her. We've had some other instances, I believe, in Topeka or Shawnee County where people have run into buildings accidentally. Some years ago, the state changed the adult driver's license to a 6-year license. And I wondered if we should look at recommending that there be only 1 or 2 year licenses that required actual driving tests for perhaps people after the age of 80 or an incident where they were at fault in an accident that somebody got hurt in. So just wanted to throw that out as an issue. Certainly, we talked about costs of things earlier. People get hurt, people die. We've had senior drivers who were the victims of getting hit by folks that maybe wouldn't have happened. So, and last but not least, KDOT. We have had an issue, kind of a perennial issue in Topeka with KDOT not mowing the rights of way on the highways that go through town. And I learned this weekend from some of my residents that it was one of our funded prisoners' crews that was out under the Polk Quincy Viaduct cutting down an entire summer's worth of vegetation. And I don't know exactly how to approach that, but perhaps advocacy at the state level for enough budget authority for KDOT to take care of their rights of way around the state, specifying an allocation that would let them do that might be at least a strategy to have. This comes up kind of every year about all the gateways to our city, the capital city, but our city as well, not being mowed. So I wanted to raise that issue. Okay. That's it.
If I could comment on the election issue, and I've been a part of discussions at the league. Generally, the feeling is that we do not try to change it because there is feeling in the legislature to make it partisan, make local elections partisan, and also to move it to the even years. So perhaps we accept where we are and go with it, because we open it up, it could get worse, at least with the current makeup of the legislature and the governor.
Good point.
Other items?
I would say on one comment on the campaign signs in the right-of-way, not every city has recognized that state law. And I think City of Wichita has adopted an ordinance and says that it's not uniform, and they've chartered out. They have an ordinance that doesn't allow signage in the right-of-way, and there may be other cities, and they take them down.
I think some in Johnson County have not observed the state law.
Well, we just sort of caved, right?
Councilman Clear.
My problem with the signs are they are not taken down. They're still all over town. I think at one point I thought, we need to fine whoever leaves their signs up, and you have to send some, city worker out to take them down. That was one of the issues I had with the signs.
Okay, anything else on the legislative agenda we want to bring up before to give to Whitney today? And I think city manager, they'll be taking this together and developing some proposals. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion. That completes our discussion items for this evening. Next, we have the announcements. There is no meeting next week, so there is no preliminary agenda. City manager, if you want to proceed with your announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Wanted to make an announcement. The City of Topeka won the Kansas City Manager's Innovation Award for the second year in a row. Innovation Award was provided for the City Council preview and recap videos created by City 4. Southwest 21st and Wanamaker is opening. Traffic control is being removed. Some turning movements are now open. No turning movements were allowed during the intersection construction. All traffic control will be removed by 5 p.m. Wednesday, November 22nd, in other words, tomorrow evening. The City of Topeka is offering free parking in downtown Topeka on Friday, November 24th and Saturday, November 25th. On-street metered parking will be free, and the following garages will be open free of charge from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. on both Friday and Saturday. Those are the garages at Townsite Plaza, 501 Southeast Monroe, the Park and Shop, 615 Southeast Quincy, Center City, 825 South Kansas Avenue and Crosby Place, and 108 Southwest A Street. Purpose to assist holiday shoppers and its merchants downtown. Wreath and other holiday greenery was placed today, or actually was readjusted today, placed earlier in the week, the entrance of City Hall in preparation of the holiday season.
And the lighting is to be Friday, I believe. They're going to turn on the lights. I just want to mention that on last Thursday, the Payless Shoe Stores announced the elimination of 170 employees. Many of those have been terminated, and few are still working there. So we certainly reach out to those who live in Topeka. We want to be helpful to them and supportive of those individuals. And I know the Chamber of Commerce and Go Topeka are working closely with them. There has been rumors that there may be more announcements forthcoming, so we want to certainly be aware of those. And in sort of a context of that, I want to mention that something that's been really not received a great deal of play in the city. The Veterans Administration is hiring or filling 140 new positions, and their starting salaries are between $49,900 and $72,000. And this has to do with the Veterans Crisis Line. If you are aware, this was started in the nation within the last 5 years because there are so many veterans that are in crisis. There are 2 call centers in the country, and the third was chosen to be here at the Veterans Administration in Topeka because of the emphasis our hospital has on mental health. And that is going to be up. They're hiring right now, typically a bachelor's to master's degree level. So these are the people who talk to the veterans in crisis. And right now, they say that over 2,000 calls come in a day to their crisis line. And typically, there are 75 that are on basis of suicide, imminent. But again, that's something good happening in Topeka, is that here we have 140 new jobs at that salary level. So that is certainly significant. We have to keep that in mind because we don't control corporations and decisions they make, and that can affect us. Okay, go to Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and not to forget our annual Thanksgiving dinner at the Expo Center. If you want to go down and volunteer, just do like me, go down there and push your weight around and get in there and volunteer. And it's very rewarding, very, very rewarding. And we're blessed to have that, and I just see the number increasing. A couple of things. I wanted to congratulate Tim Renter. I think he just got back from his honeymoon. He's still smiling, and a couple of the elected officials got to see him married. But congratulations, Tim. Show your ring. Show everybody. There you go. He's taken. He's taken. Another thing is, I wanted to ask the city manager if he would look into. Are we fining the contractors when they are overdue on their projects in a timely manner? I know the county's big on that, and I'd like to make sure that we're doing that. If you could find that out and let me know, that would be great. Because I know my district is not in West Topeka, but I do hear a lot of street closures and all of that and how they should have been done. So if you could look into that to see where we're at on that and how we're doing, I think if that's not in the contract, we've always asked that it be in the contract, and I think that's something very, very important. Also, I wanted to say that Fremont Hill, which is overdue, I was a little kid and used to go down that street, and it opened today, and it looks great. I just have one complaint. I apologize, City Manager. If you look on the east side, it's a perfect sidewalk, just perfect. But if you look on the west side, it's zigzag, and I don't quite understand why it's zigzag, why it doesn't curve around like the other side. This was also done on Wanamaker, if the council remembers, and we went back out there and we tore that sidewalk out because the residents out there did not like it. It looks like the person was drunk or whatever. And so I just want to know, why are we doing our sidewalks like that on a perfectly great street like that? If you could get that information back to me as well.
A slalom run for Tony.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. But Joe has been keeping us abreast on that, and it does look good. And so those are the things that I would like to know. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spent a lot of time Saturday at the Expo Center. I don't know if it was something Brett recruited to town or not, but it was the Kansas State High School, Activities Association, the cheer competition. And Elaine's granddaughter, Cammie Wells, was a Shawnee Heights cheerleader for a number of years. But this year they had the first ever championship for Kansas, and Shawnee Heights won the 5A state championships. The first time ever. So, and I will brag, my daughter is a senior on the Shawnee Heights team, as well as Kia Downing's son is a freshman on the team, a great kid. So that was a great thing. I mean, all these schools from, a lot of eastern schools in Kansas that have lots of money, that our kids just did a fantastic job. So I want to congratulate them on that.
Councilwoman Delisle.
I want to echo the sentiments of wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and also remind everybody, we were talking about suicide prevention, that the holidays are hard times. There's many families, as all of you know, I'm pretty open about the fact that mental health is near and dear to my family, and I just want to encourage everybody to exercise a little bit more kindness towards each other. If you feel hopeless, if you feel alone in this season, we have resources in Vallejo and Family Service and Guidance Center that are there to support you. And just reach out, and just to everybody, you never know the impact that your smile or just a gesture of kindness can do for somebody else. So be sensitive this season.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen.
I also would like to wish all of you and everyone watching happy Thanksgiving. This is the kickoff to the happiest time of year, so please remember those that are less fortunate than yourselves. We've all done very well, but there are lots of folks that don't quite have what we've been able to get. So please remember that as we start to move into the Christmas season. And I will again challenge the council. I think we should adopt a family from a Christmas tree.
I think we did.
Yep.
Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Topeka Zoo has helped us kick off the giving season and make a difference in the Topeka community. Join us as we celebrate Giving Zoo Day on Tuesday, November 28th. This year on Giving Zoo Day, we are challenging the community to help those less fortunate by purchasing a Friends of the Topeka Zoo membership as a gift to be given to a family in need. So you can go to their website and also on the 28th. Last Sunday, I went to the Interfaith Thanksgiving service, and it was the year of the child, and this was the first one I had been to, and I really encourage everyone to go in the coming years. This is 12 churches and the Islamic Center, Temple Beth Shalom, the Buddhist Prayer Zen Center, Hindu Community, Universalist Fellowship, the Baha'i community, and even the Native American community is represented there. And there, I just want to read what they sent everybody to send off. We send you forth with warm wishes from home to home and from heart to heart to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. May the season of Thanksgiving be a beautiful reminder of the wonderful things in life. Happy Thanksgiving.
Very good. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cohen. Councilman Harmon. Councilwoman Hiller.
Quick ones. People have been talking about the holidays. Certainly Thanksgiving is a special time, and I appreciate Councilwoman Delisle's comments and others. Something people think about but don't take the step to do is just to invite someone to join them. It's so easy, and encourage everybody to do that, or accept an invitation if it's offered. It makes a difference. The day after Thanksgiving is Miracle on Kansas Avenue, the dedication of the marquee for the Jayhawk Theater, all kinds of things happening downtown. So go by yourself, take everybody, whatever works. Spend time downtown. And then Saturday is Small Business Saturday. So shop local, shop often, take everybody out and get the season started well. And then Councilwoman Schwartz mentioned Giving Zoo Day, but Tuesday is Giving Tuesday, and if people just kind of pay attention to all sorts of media, you'll see that that's an opportune time to come together and make contributions to whoever you think would benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Claire.
Just everyone have a safe holiday.
Thank you. That completes the announcements. Next, we have public comment. The first person is Rose Welch, signed to speak.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Rose Welch, and I am a recent Kansas transplant. I'm originally from Houston, but I've spent over a decade in Oklahoma until about a month ago when I moved here to District 5 in Topeka. During my time in Oklahoma, I was a community organizer, and I studied English and rhetoric at Cameron University. Here, I'm a labor organizer for AFT Kansas, and I'm involved in other community groups as well. When I decided to leave Oklahoma, I had quite a few choices. I had offers from Oakland to Newark to Houston. Kansas was not on my list of prospective places, but I got a call about a job here. And the more that I read about Kansas, the more that I fell in love with it. In so many ways, Kansas has been the forefront of civil rights advances, and this history made me decide to put down roots here in Topeka. Since I've been here, I've been very welcomed. Never have I met friendlier people, and the will to grow and fight is here. I found a home here within 48 hours of accepting the job offer, and I registered to vote while packing a U-Haul in Oklahoma. The election was held within my first few days here, and as you might imagine, not being from here, I had difficulty making my choices. Cities are all really unique microcosms, and they're impossible to truly understand until you've become a real part of the community. So with that in mind, I did research on the candidates. While Spencer Duncan had some solid goals, I found that I was reluctant to vote for somebody who'd previously identified with a different party without explaining why he changed his affiliation. On the other hand, as I read through the campaign statements made by Michelle De La Isla, I saw that her statements and goals were semantically null. There was no real content there. So while my inclination was always to vote for a brown woman, I had a hard time voting for a woman whose platform seemed to be all noise and no signal. The following weekend, I was at a meeting with other Kansas activists, and everyone was so happy that we had elected you, and that reassured me in my choice, but I still have doubts. When I was researching candidates for my district, I read about Mike Padilla's long record of community service, but I questioned whether he would truly keep my interest in his heart and in his vote. Over and over again, I hear that problems in police forcing are just some bad cops. But what is a good cop who covers for a bad cop, if not just another bad cop? As a Latina woman within this community, I was happy to vote for other people so much like myself, but only if they really are like me. I'm addressing this council as a body, but with special emphasis for our representatives of color when I say this. Not all skin folk are kinfolk, but we need you to be kinfolk now, particularly on the issue of police transparency. In Oklahoma, the release of police body cam footage is restricted as it is here. In Oklahoma, police body cam footage may be withheld when it depicts nudity, minors, informants, sex crime victims, domestic violence victims, personal information, and medical information that's not already public. In Oklahoma, police body cam footage may be withheld that depicts a death unless that death was caused by law enforcement. In Oklahoma, police body cam footage may be redacted of great bodily harm and severe violence unless those acts were caused by law enforcement. This satisfies the fine line between respecting the privacy and safety of individuals and respecting the public's right to a transparent police force. In Oklahoma, we wouldn't be forced to stand in a room without even knowing if the police forces in this room were the ones who murdered our neighbor. So right now, what the city of Topeka is saying to the world is that there is more justice for black citizens in rural Oklahoma than there is in the capital city of the state of Kansas. Right now in Topeka, Kansas, the newly elected leader of my city is a brown woman, and the newly elected leader of my district is a brown man. And that's a wonderful thing, unless all y'all are sitting there as Uncle Toms. If you're not sitting there as vendidos, then join with us and use the collective power that we've given you with our votes to demand and create transparency in police forcing, beginning with releasing the footage of the death of Dominique White. Thank you.
The next person to speak is Sarah Oglesby.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Sarah Oglesby Dunnigan. I am a minister here in town for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and this is my 4th year in Topeka. I'm also a mother of 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 16-year-old, and a teacher. I have a master's degree of divinity, obviously because I'm a minister, but I also have a master's degree in public administration. And I've spent 13 years in urban community colleges in downtown Dallas and in downtown Denver. So this is one of the smaller cities I've lived in and worked in. During the time that I worked in the Urban Community College District, I also worked for the Dallas County Jail, and I've also been an organizer in HUD housing. Today I'm here in search of leadership. Not unlike Rose, who was here a moment ago, I have some very serious questions for you all to consider in your next year together. I want to know, why did we invest in body cams for officers if they're not going to be used for transparency and accountability? Just straight up. That's a really important question for you all to help us answer. I would like to see in this next year, when you're negotiating your new contract with the police union, that you look at ways to untie your hands so that you have access to that and you're not fighting legal battles with the union. This is a really important conversation for you to be having, especially in a time when the Kansas City Star has done a series of searing articles about the lack of transparency and accountability in Kansas, putting us basically at the bottom of the pile in the union. We need leadership, and we need you all here in Capital City in Kansas to take part in that, to stand up. I would like to see us honor the intentions of the law we do have to allow parents and adult family members to view the body cam footage if no one else. I see us doing a loophole kind of thing. I see you not being required to show it to them, but it's ridiculous, and we need to go ahead and let the family see what happened to their son. And we need a true citizen advisory board that works with our police department, not a police chief's advisory board, but we need a citizen review board that is accountable to the citizens, not just back to a police chief. I think you all can help research that. I think you can look at what other cities our size have decided to do, and I think that that body should be also allowed to see body cam footage, especially in the kind of situations that Rose just mentioned. Situations where transparency and accountability are of utmost concern. I consider the death of Dominique White to be a form of extrajudicial killing. You might not like that language, but somebody got killed in a situation where they did not get to see a judge or jury, they did not get charged with anything, and we need answers. That's an inappropriate way for somebody to die, and we need to be concerned about it. We need to talk about and consider the impact of this death on our community, especially for those who live in the Ripley area and anyone who identifies as a person of color. And we need to look very closely at how policing and race intersect. Kansas University professor Charles Epp wrote a book recently called Pulled Over. You all should read it. It really emphasizes the prevalence of racial profiling and the use of the investigatory stop, which may be the kind of thing that was happening in Ripley Park, and how dangerous these situations are because they can escalate tensions between the community and the police when that's not necessary. We can't fix something if we can't admit that there's a problem. If we can't admit that something really egregious has happened. In fact, if we'd rather talk about traffic issues for elderly folk than talk about why somebody has died by 2 police officers.
Okay, your time is up.
So as a minister and a person of faith, I encourage you to have courageous love and to do something. Stand up for leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. The next person is O'Shawn Hayes.
Oshara.
Okay, that's- I may not have pronounced your name properly. I apologize.
Oshara.
O'Sara, thank you.
Yes. Good to see you this evening. Thank you. First of all, I want to say that I agree with everything that Reverend Sarah has said, everything Rose Welch has said, and everything that Yasmari Rodriguez has said. I stand before you as a citizen of Topeka and as an artist in the community. I'm also concerned about the police body cam and lack of transparency that has been with the Topeka Police Department. And it's my understanding, I don't have it officially, but it's my understanding that the mayor has power to get information from the police department in Lawrence. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard. And I would like you to look into that. As the mayor of Topeka, I would look, if that is the truth, and that is something that you have power to do, I would ask that you take it upon yourself to talk to the municipalities in Lawrence to have that done. And I would ask all of you to look into that. I really would appreciate that. And I ask you to assess the situation and what you can do as a council. And I just want you to know that there was another incident, not just with body cam, where someone had gone to the police department and somehow it's missing. It's gone. They don't know where it is. That should not be. I think it's the city council and the mayor's job to make sure that that does not happen. And those things should be available to families that need it. I've spoken to people who are afraid to even come out to speak publicly because of being followed by the police department. If they come out and say something, then all of a sudden have tickets on them. They're being troubled, and then they've got all these money and fines that they have to pay through situations. I don't think that's appropriate, and I would hope that you can look into that and do something about that, and be all more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
And I will say, the mayor does not have that authority.
Oh, he doesn't?
Does
Okay.
not have that authority with the other police department.
Okay.
But we can talk about that, give you some more information on that
Okay.
later. Okay,
Thank you for that clarity. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That completes the public comment for this evening. Council, we do have an executive session. If the city attorney would provide the parameters for that, please.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of 15 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privileged matters, including potential litigation as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber, Financial and Administrative Services Director Nikki Lee, Associate City Attorney Nick Jefferson, and myself.
Okay, is there a motion? Councilman Harmon moves to go into a session on that basis. Councilman Emerson seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Yeah. If it works.
10 yes.
10 yes, we'll go to executive session when the room is clear. We'll take a short 15 minutes.